Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku was the lost Shigaraki brother? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanf. Many people nowadays believe that the dawn of quirks began with the single glowing baby in Qingqing, China. The truth, however, is slightly different for those who were there and lived through it. Mutation, meta powers, or abilities, whatever you wanted to call it, had been around long before the rest of the world realized it. Later, some scientists theorized that ancient gods, goddesses, and supernatural creatures were made up of people with such abilities. During modern times, however, instead of being revered as gods, these people were often treated as outcasts or freaks. They hid in the fringes of society, trying their best to stay alive and cursing their fate. When the first quirk made its appearance, things quickly went from bad to worse. The world's most carefully guarded secret, a veritable powder keg, finally found its proverbial match. The news of people with powers was suddenly blown wide open for the rest of the world to see. Chaos quickly ran rampant worldwide. People were accused left and right of having or being related to someone having abilities. Many died struggling to survive. Murdered for something they couldn't control. Around this time there were some brave souls who banded together to fight back against the suppression. In Japan, a small family secretly took up the battle and struggled to bring equality to those with and without meta abilities. Their family name was Shigaraki. Led by Hitoshi Shigaraki, a rising politician, and his wife Inko Akitani Shigaraki, the couple created a vast underground network. They offered food and shelter, medical attention, even helped people hide or disappear. No task was too big or small for the Shigaraki family when they all worked together. Assisted by Hitoshi's younger brother Tamura, the group worked tirelessly for those who could not fight for themselves. Their reason? A young girl and the childhood friend of the youngest Shigaraki brother Izuku named Midori. Upon finding out her daughter could make flowers bloom, Midori's mother murdered her child and husband, who had been attempting to shield his daughter from her mother, in cold blood before disappearing without a trace. Justice was sadly never found for these two victims. Police either choosing to let the woman go or being unable to find her. Using Midori and her father as a symbol, the small family got to work. By day, Hitoshi would use his charm to implement laws and legislations to help people to try and catch up with the ever-changing world. Meanwhile, Inko as a lawyer helped people arrested to avoid harsh and unfair jail time. At night, husband and wife would don the names One for All and All for One. Together they would descend with Izuku, or as he went at that time, All or Nothing, to handle things in a more hands-on manner. The family fought against the inhumane treatment and the groups that tried to oppress them wherever and whenever they could find it. Many people found themselves freed from forced government-sponsored institutions and militia prisons thanks to the Shigarakis. Children who were abandoned or with no family to speak of were spirited away to a remote school run by Tamura. The children would receive a proper education as well as training to properly hide or use their powers. For those with abilities that couldn't be hidden, well, they were offered a chance to have it taken away or destroyed by Izuku and Hitoshi. The family never held a grudge against a person no matter what choice they made. It was that reason why so many chose to follow them. Hitoshi and Inko believed everything they fought and sacrificed for would all be worth it if their only child Mikumo could have a better future. However, things are seldom fair in the world. One dark day, Midori's mother, now known as the cleaner amongst the militia groups, returned. The woman entered the mansion and murdered everyone inside. Only Izuku survived the encounter. Though he was forever changed, deeply scarred both physically and mentally, refusing to speak at all about what had happened. With his wife and child lost, Hitoshi felt like he was standing on top of a cliff. A deep sea of rage and grief below calling to him. Only his brothers stopped him from diving headfirst into the abyss. But a cruel series of dominoes had already begun falling against Hitoshi. Izuku's physical therapy clinic was bombed, and the boy disappeared. Vanished without a trace, believed to be dead by many. After losing both his wife, child, and now his youngest brother, Hisashi became worse than before. Tamura tried to help his brother, but their already straining relationship finally snapped when Hisashi forced a quirk on his brother and was locked away. Thankfully, there were those inside Hisashi's organization that feared what the man was becoming now. They were the ones who saw up close the anger building and feared where it could take them. Along with a few graduates of Tamura's school, they helped the man escape and hide from his brother. As time marched on and Tamura saw his brother only a handful of times, he watched helplessly as Hisashi drowned himself in a sea of blood before he also passed away, eventually taking up his fallen wife's name and become all for one. The Merchant of Quirks. First Demon. Shinigami. There were many names Tamura heard his brother called over the years. Each time a piece of news was brought to him, Tamura felt himself die a little more inside. Until Tamura died for the last time. This death from a stray bullet during a firefight against militias, Hisashi's people and the police as his tried to escape. Yet, something miraculous happened. The quirk that was forced upon Tamura merged with one he never knew about. Thus, One for All as we know it now was born. Tamura's successor, who had sat with him in his final moments, used the name his teacher had in his long struggle against his brother. A small wish had been planted deep within the quirk, along with an echo of Tamura. One that wanted to free Hisashi from his pain. The second fought for many years and numerous scores of All for One's people to deliver Tamura's final message. Sadly, the now symbol of chaos and evil did not see things that way and accused the second holder of stealing his brother's quirk, demanding its return. The pair fought for days before Hisashi finally killed the second as he protected the man who would become the third. And thus, that cycle continued for more than 200 years. Inheritors of One for All fought against All for One, growing more and more powerful with each generation. And each and every one of them dying at the hands of All for One. Their last acts secretly passing the quirk along to their own successor in the hopes of one day defeating the man. Eventually, it found its way to the eighth holder, Toshinori Yagi. Or as he was better known as All Might. All Might had many fights against All for One. In his most brutal match, he severely injured the man. And for many years afterwards, All Might believed his arch-nemesis dead. Izuku Shigaraki suddenly reappeared in front of him, having woken up from being cryogenically frozen alone and confused. The pair, along with Gran Torino, Nana Shimura, the Seventh's best friend and mentor, Shoyuda Izawa, the underground hero, known as Eraserhead, and Detective Naomasa Tsukachi journeyed to find out what happened. After learning about his brother's fates, Izuku became angry and depressed. But unlike the events that transpired between his two brothers, Toshinori refused to let history repeat itself. The eighth holder stayed by Izuku's side even when the boy tried to push him away. Meddling where you aren't wanted is what makes a true hero, after all. And thanks to that, Izuku now had a goal. Just like Tamura before him, Izuku would find Hisashi, and he would save him. He would save every person he could, to make up for not being there to save his family before. Izuku Shigaraki would be a hero. Green eyes looked longingly at the large cup. I will not be bribed. A civilian-dressed present Mike nodded at Midnight, who pulled something out, placing it on the table next to the drink. I can dash. It's your favorites? Midnight purred, pointed at the bag. Inside contained Izuku's favorite treat next to a large to-go cup of coffee. I can absolutely be bribed, the boy said, reaching out and grabbing the drink and pastry from both heroes. Thank you for the food. The pair high-fived each other secretly. They hadn't broken someone this fast since Shoyuda adopted his last cat. Izuku set to work devouring the pastry, pausing only to take a sip of coffee, reveling in the taste. Toshi never let him have coffee anymore. Not since the chat with Recovery Girl and Shoyuda about healthy nutrition. At the beginning of Izuku's beach cleanup, the pair had gone to see the woman. The beach was a perfect place for Izuku to work on his grief. And it was also a great way to exercise and build up his strength for his upcoming entrance to the hero course. And another important part of building that strength came with setting up a healthy meal plan. In a weird twist of fate, such a task was perfect for Toshi. The man had secretly procured a diploma in his youth in nutrition while he was in the United States. The tall blonde also had another office administration that he started masquerading as All Might's secretary. Izuku had joked about getting Toshi a pair of glasses when he found out. The comparison going right over everyone's head sadly. Neither male had any idea that Aizawa had also been listening in on their conversation. The underground hero had snuck into the infirmary and had been sleeping on one of the beds. That is until he had slunk out from behind the curtain. Izuku was not ashamed to say that he and Toshi had let out shrill screams when the yellow sleeping bag had slid out from underneath the curtain. Coffee that was once Izuku's lifeline had been banned until after exams, much to his horror. The green-haired boy had tried to argue but the hero just gave him a deadpan stare. Even Nedzu had gleefully gotten in on the ban, letting the rest of the staff know. Lunch Rush would not longer give Izuku his favorite drink. The chef hero would instead pat Izuku's head and give him a glass of milk when he tried to use the puppy dog eyes. So, Izuku said, wiping the crumbs away looking at the pair. What do I have to do again? Well, you see, Midnight started explaining. Recommendation exams are usually straightforward. Heroes stay in one area while examinees takes the test. Apparently, years back during the one, a hero used their quirk to give their candidate help. Of course, the candidate didn't know this and was later admitted to general studies, but it caused a big mess at the time. Most heroes normally comply with the rule now, and there isn't a problem but this year Endeavor's recommending his son, Present Mike interrupted, cutting right to the heart of the matter. And since he thinks rules don't apply to him. Endeavor, Izuku said, a constipated face surrounded by fire suddenly appearing in his mind. Oh, flame guy. You got it, Present Mike nodded, giving a thumbs up. That's why Nedzu wants you to go undercover in the exam groups. He also wants us to tell you that this is part of your own exam. My exam. We already know that you'll ace any written and practical thrown at you, Midnight explained. Memories of the first time the heroine watched a video of Izuku fighting against Power Loader's robots. So Nedzu decided on something different for you. You're going to be going into the exam completely blind. Your task is to observe not only the students' quirks but also their personalities. Your observations and judgment will be taken into consideration when the students are being chosen. Nedzu basically wants to use that big brain of yours when it comes to selection this year, Present Mike simplified. And speaking of the upcoming year, have you told your brother what you're planning to do? Izuku's face dropped almost as if a dark cloud had appeared. I have, but he hasn't responded to me. I think he's mad about my decision. Messages between Izuku and Hisashi had started out small. Both brothers asked if the other was okay, if they were safe, eating well. Things had quietly progressed from there. Hisashi started asking questions that only Izuku would know. What sort of flowers was in Inko's wedding bouquet? Mikumo's favorite stuffed animal? How Tamura got that scar on his elbow? Eventually, Izuku had gotten fed up with the constant questions and demanded to know why Hisashi was interrogating him. Hisashi apologized and then asked one final question. Where have you been? Izuku hadn't known what to say at that. Spending days agonizing over how to tell his brother and using the beach cleanup to work out some of his frustration. Finally, he had asked Toshi what to do. The man was surprised for a second before a strange look came to his face, and he told Izuku to tell Hisashi everything. The whole story from waking up underground with no idea what had happened. That a hero had found him and taken Izuku to the police. That he had been learning from Nedzu at UA and wanted to be a hero. Toshi had only asked that Izuku not tell Hisashi about his involvement. Your brother and I have a very bloody history. Even if he's not as active as 5 years ago, he still has powerful allies. If All for One finds out that All Might of all people is looking after his kid brother, well, he might just ask them to do something stupid. So Izuku did just that. He explained the whole story. Even telling Hisashi something he hadn't told anyone else yet. One night when he was working on the beach and it was super cold, Izuku had suddenly hit by a memory. He remembered beating his hands against something like glass, unable to move much as shadowed forms just watched him from the other side. The world became colder and colder until Izuku could no longer take it anymore and lost consciousness. Looking into cryogenics, Izuku found virtually nothing on the subject in the modern era. But tracing it back, there was a slew of scientists that had been working on it around the so-called dawn of quirks. It was clear after that Izuku someone had given him the Steve Rogers experience. But unlike Cap, who took a quick nap and woke up after 50 years, Izuku had a lengthier experience. Upon hearing this, Hitoshi had immediately demanded that Izuku come to find him, but the boy declined. As much as he wanted to see his older brother, it still felt too soon. Izuku was still sorting out his memories, feelings, and what he wanted to do. Hound Dog was helping where he could, but Izuku suffered from classic Shigaraki stubbornness. Telling Hitoshi he wanted to become a hero had similarly not gone over well. Thus, the silent treatment he was receiving from the man. Although there were times when Izuku could swear he felt someone watching him. Zuku. Yo, little listener, a pair of fingers snapped in front of Izuku's face, snapping him out of his thoughts. Ground control calling Izuku. Can you hear me? What? He asked, looking at the pair. Sorry. What were we talking about? Your brother, present, Mike repeated. Izuku sighed. Still ignoring me? Well, it's no surprise there, Midnight spoke, sipping her own drink. Suspension quirks almost completely unheard of. No one knows much about them or how they work. Being held in one for over 30 years only to come back. And find out your brother is a kingpin of some large criminal organization. Must be hard for the both of you. The R-rated heroine turned around and winked. Which is why if you ever need to pick me up, just let me know. I'll always give a cutie like you a hug. Izuku gave the woman a deadpan stare. I'm still too old for you. So cold, Nemuri swooned. Izuku started laughing and was quickly followed in turn by the two heroes. Across the street, a camera glinted in the sun, lens zooming in on the cafe's table. Subject, Izuku Shigaraki. Status. Laughing, a small Nomu spoke robotically from his spot on All for One's desk. Subject, Hero number 19 present Mike. Status, laughing. Hero number 20 Midnight. Status, laughing. Conclusion. Subjects appear happy. The doctor stood beside the Nomu, studying it. How has this Nomu been working for you, sensei? Melding the parts together like you asked proved to be quite the challenge. Even for me. As always, you have succeeded, Ujiko, All for One said, his fingers tracing the cable that ran from the computer to the back of the Nomu's head. This creature was different from the other Nomu Ujiko had created in the past. For one thing, the creature only had one quirk inside it. Terabyte might not sound like the flashiest of quirks, but with the information that All for One had downloaded in the creature's brain, it served its purpose as the man's eyes. Its only job was to watch Izuku from safely behind the cameras. All for One was able to hack and report how his brother was faring. The symbol of chaos originally wanted to call Kurogiri and grab his brother. Hide Izuku away for his own safety. But memories of Tamura looking at him with fear and anger as he wasted away a little more every day stopped him. Not to mention all the heroes around Izuku made extracting him much trickier. Especially that damned All Might. Why Izuku would ever want to be one of those spandex-wearing simpletons Hitoshi couldn't understand. Then again, his baby brother had always enjoyed reading American comics and manga when he was young. I was surprised when you showed me the picture, sensei, Ujiko said, light reflecting off his glasses as he watched the boy explain something. Who would have thought your brother was still alive? And he claims to have been frozen for 200 years. That is what he's told me, All for One hummed. You must have heard something about this. A rumor concerning cryonics? To be honest, many sciences were abandoned or outright blacklisted in the early years because of the Department of Quirks. The doctor spoke a trace of annoyance in his tone. Space travel, renewable energy, medical treatments. Even something simple like an organ transplant suddenly required mountains of paperwork. The blind man nodded, understanding what the doctor was talking about, adding his own 2 cents on the matter. Those without quirks did not want risk infection, as I recall. If only they had known that all humans had the quirk factor back then and just not presented. The world might be a very different place, the doctor sighed. But due to the long gap between those times, science has much to catch up with. Unfortunately, some areas are worse off because of a lack of interest. Why try and create renewable energy? Someone with an electric quirk can just supply it. All for One made a sour face. He hated the way people forced responsibility off on others just because of their quirks. It was not fair to the people who were being forced and would no doubt come back and bit humanity hard later on. Imagine if all the plot of all those zombie movies actually happened one day. Hitoshi doubted people would have enough brain power to figure out how to keep themselves safe. Instead, it would fall to the heroes to save them, and when they'd have fell, so would society. What about cloning? Dr. Ujiko said, placing his hand on his chin and thinking about it. I have heard of people with duplication or cloning quirks. Success ranges between the size of the DNA sample and how well they know the subject. However, for the young master, I would say it's impossible. Can you say that with 100% certainty, though? All for One asked with a dangerous tone. No, not with first running his DNA, Dr. Ujiko said honestly. Given a large enough sample, he could run the boy's blood through every test possible. If the boy was a clone or some type of fake, then Ujiko would find out. If not, well, it would be interesting to see what something like all or nothing could do to the Nomu he was creating. Have you told Tamura Shigaraki about this? Ujiko asked, suddenly wanting to change the subject. His assistance could actually prove useful at obtaining a sample. Tamura has his own tasks right now, All for One answered, a fond smile on his face. And when it comes to me or the topic of family, he can be quite sensitive. Ujiko resisted the urge to snort. Before I even introduce him to the idea of Izuku, I have to make certain the boy is who he claims to be, the heavy feeling in his stomach making itself known again. The feeling had made its home in Hitoshi's gut since All for One received his first reply from Izuku. My family will not fall into ruin again. I will protect them even. All for One clenched his fist and focused unseeing eyes at Izuku's smiling face. Even if it means ripping this fake apart to find what's left of my real brother. Izuku huffed as he carried the last tire over to the trash pile. He'd finally reached the bottom of the last garbage mountain and found an old Volkswagen buried underneath. After placing a phone call, he began slowly taking it apart piece by piece. Once the last of the garbage was removed, all it would take was a couple of days making the beach look nice again before Izuku was officially finished his cleanup. There was this strange hollow in Izuku seeing sand now where once there was garbage. Snapping out of his thoughts, Izuku looked at the source of the noise. Toshi sat leaning out the passenger side window waving at him. Smiling, Izuku ran over to the large vehicle seeing a civilian power loader in the driver's seat. Hi, Izuku greeted the heroes. Thanks for coming. I didn't know who else to call about it. I never say no to free material, power loader grinned, giving a thumbs up. And I have a couple of third years who are big into vehicles. This might be a great way for them to test any projects they might have. Well, I've taken it mostly apart. Izuku gestured towards the large pile of car parts he had made. Just the car itself is left. Give me a moment, and I can have it loaded up on the flatbed for you. Jumping off the truck, Izuku's feet never touched the ground. Turning around, he saw All Might giving him a disapproving look. A car is much heavier than the other items you've removed, the hero said, placing Izuku down on the ground. It's a small car, Izuku mumbled. Nonetheless, All Might spoke, opening the door and getting out of the cab. I will remove it for you. Before Izuku could argue that this was his project, Toshinori was already taking off running towards the beach. Sighing, Izuku turned back towards the car parts and started grabbing them. After getting one of the seats loaded on, he felt something rest on his head. Followed it and saw Power Loader smiling at him. You've done a really great thing here, kid. You should be so proud of what you've accomplished. Anyone could have done this. Izuku blushed, looking away. It's not that big a deal. Don't sell yourself short. Do you know how many people just walked by and did nothing? Power Loader asked. But I didn't do this to be nice, Izuku argued. I did it because I needed to do something, or I would go crazy. It was selfish? Power Loader sighed. And who gets to decide what's selfish? Kid, you were hurting. Hell, you probably still are, but you're trying. Do you know how many people I've seen do something stupid? Just 'cause they're hurting? It was true. Many people became villains because they were in pain. Just like many others became heroes for those so-called selfish reasons. Majima himself had done it to prove just how valuable support items were to the industry. Hound Dog and Vlad King did it to fight quirk discrimination. Midnight to take the over-sexualized way society saw female heroes and turn it back around on them. People like the hero killer didn't care that they were just as human as everyone else. The trend of money, power, and fame was becoming more popular amongst the newer students. But didn't make them bad people. Just young and inexperienced about the ways of the world. UA was there so that they could help the students grow. They understood that a selfish reason isn't necessarily wrong if you look at it differently. I became a hero for fame. It could so easily be turned around and used to help bring light to the darker parts of their society. Money could be donated to help people struggling. Power to protect the powerless. It was all about perspective. And how much work you were willing to put into it. Power loader is right. Toshinori's voice came just as the flatbed sunk a little under the weight of the car. You shouldn't sell yourself short. What you've done here is a big deal and will make many people happy. Who cares why you did it? Izuku opened his mouth and looked like he wanted to argue. Now come on, let's get the rest of this stuff loaded up, Toshinori smiled, puffing himself up. You have a date tonight with a pair of sisters, as I recall. Toshi! Izuku cried out, going completely red. Don't say it like that. Ha! Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Ha! Mei cackled as she rolled around in the background. Much to Izuku's regret, Mimi had noticed his red face and asked if he was feeling okay. Not wanting to lie to the girl, Izuku had told the sisters what Toshi had said. It's not funny, Izuku whined, feeling his face heat up again. What if someone got the wrong idea? Charming, I blow myself up regularly, Mei snickered, sitting back up. Pretty sure the bar's set low when it comes to me. Mimi reached out and tugged her sister's shirt. Mei, what's wrong with Izuku dating us? Doesn't dating mean you like spending time with a person a lot? Mei froze, her eyes widening comically. Go ask Mom. Okay. Mimi nodded, disappearing from the screen before Mei could stop her. The inventor's hand was held straight out for a moment before she groaned, running her hand over her face. I'm so dead. Karma. Mei stuck her tongue out. Good. The pair lapsed into silence for a moment before Mei gave Izuku a severe look. Did you remember Mimi's necklace? Thinking back, Izuku remembered seeing Mimi holding up the new piece of jewelry last week during one of their talks. It was a simple metal pendant made to look like a flower that suited the girl well. What about it? Izuku asked. Mei sighed and ran her hand through her hair. It's a tracker. What? Huao dash. Gramps, Mei answered, holding up her arm and showing off a bracelet with a wrench-shaped charm on it. I was testing out a new scanner and found them. I asked Gramps about it, and he said it was so he could keep us safe. That's... Izuku began before trailing off. Honestly, he wasn't sure what to say to Mei. He wouldn't have been surprised if Hisashi had done this with him and Tamura, especially after Midori. But finding and knowing about it was different than being ignorant. Gramps never talks about his past, Mei continued looking serious. But I think something bad happened to him. Izuku sighed and took a deep breath. Let's be honest here for a second. If something happened to you or Mimi, what do you think Gramps would do? Bitch slap whatever idiot was stupid enough to mess with us, Mei answered without a moment's hesitation. Bingo, Izuku nodded. You're just upset 'cause he didn't tell you? But really, who would come after us? Anti-quirkless groups for one, Izuku said, causing the inventor to flinch. Taking another deep breath, Izuku softened his tone so that he didn't sound so harsh. Just talk to him. Tell him you're how you feel about being tracked without permission. But dash. Mei, you're smart, probably the smartest person I've ever met, Izuku continued. Trust your instincts. If something did happen to your Gramps in the past, you need to know. If not for your own safety, then for Mimi's. Mei sat there before nodding. He offered to pay for self-defense lessons for us. Personally, I don't need it. Anybody stupid enough to mess with me either meets the business end of my wrench. But Mom's thinking of taking him up to it for Mimi. Especially with me moving to UA's new dorm system for the upcoming school year. Izuku gave a fake gasp. But May, you haven't even been accepted yet? Yet is the key word there. Charming, the inventor gave a vicious smile. One look at my babies, and you'd will be begging me to join. May. A dark voice came as an older version of Mimi made an appearance over the back of the couch. Why did your sister ask me about dating just now? I've told you no dating until you're 30. Hi again, Izuku. Mimi appeared smiling on the screen again as May was dragged off by her mother. Izuku laughed and started talking to Mimi. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Izuku was exhausted. Turns out that UA's exams were all jam-packed together. First were all the recommendation students for the 4 courses. Then after figuring out who would receive the 12 coveted spots, the school only a couple of days to prepare for the open exams. For the recommendation exams, only 50 students were allowed to compete for 4 spots. 4 highly desired spots for each of the hero, general, management and support courses. Izuku had offered to introduce May to Power Loader. The girl had just waved him off, saying she enjoyed the competition of a large group. Usually, the hero course didn't have as many participants as the others. But last year, Nedzu had changed the rule, opening it up for sidekicks to propose a would-be candidate. They still had to receive permission from their agency, but now those who weren't in top-ranked positions had a chance to choose someone for the next generation. Each day 10 of the students for every course completed, giving it everything they had in a battle to get chosen for one of the sought-after positions. So far, Izuku has seen some exciting people competing in the hero exams over the past 4 days. There was a boy who could merge shadows, a girl able to be able to create anything, a person with what looked like engines coming out of his legs, and another who could split and control parts of her body at will. Choosing was just so hard. Izuku wanted everyone to succeed. No scratch that there were a few people Izuku didn't want to succeed. The candidate from the Pro Hero Slide and Go, for example. The hero had brazenly come up to Izuku on the 3rd day with his recommendation and introduced themselves. None of the other heroes or students had recognized Izuku from his viral video so far. But those 2 had. Almost like they'd been searching for Izuku. Something about how the hero and his protege, a girl with a powerful quirk, unsettled the curly-haired boy. The girl used her quirk with such ease it was like she had been training her whole life for some upcoming battle. Her tactics were brutal and completely without mercy. When she had injured another candidate, she didn't apologize. She instead scoffed and called them weaklings. Then there was the way the pair had talked. It reminded Izuku of the sycophants who used to hang around Hisashi, always trying to flatter the rising politician. Well, secretly holding a knife behind their backs, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Nedzu seemed to sense this too. At the end of the day, he put the girl's file in the rejection pile with the few others. Now it was the last day, and Izuku had his 10 notebooks set aside for his notes. Each student got an entire notebook dedicated to themselves for Nedzu to look over later. The individual trials had gone well. Students were asked to show off their quirks and explain the nature of how it worked. 2 students stuck out the most to Izuku after listening. Inasa Yorashi and Shuto Todoroki. Inasa was loud and passionate about wanting to be a hero. And his quirk, a wind type, allowed him to make something as simple as a breeze or as strong as a hurricane was impressive. Izuku strongly believed from everything he had learned so far that Inasa was a top 10 hero in the making. But that was also where he ran into trouble. The entire time Inasa talked about his quirk, he only focused on its combat uses. He never once mentioned how it could aid everyday citizens or assist in disaster relief. And then there was the way he looked at Endeavor or his son when he thought no one was watching. Shuto Todoroki, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. Quiet and focused on the exams with such a degree, it was a little off-putting. He was well-balanced in talking about the offensive and defensive uses of his quirk. And he had a good handle on its application in disaster and rescue situations. But there was also this look in the boy's eyes that had Izuku wondering what could have created such smoldering rage. Then there was Endeavor himself. More than once Izuku had been strongly tempted to punch the flame hero. Endeavor just couldn't seem to listen when they told him he had to wait in the lounge area. Endeavor would just glare and cross his arms in some attempt to intimidate whatever unfortunate staff member tried to caution him. The flame hero only seemed to back off for good when Netsu personally warned him if Endeavor continued his behavior, he would receive a hefty fine. A complaint would be filed with the HPSC, and Shudo would forfeit his chances at continuing the exams. Shudo Todoroki stood next to his father when Netsu gave his final warning, and his expression never changed. It was like the boy was carved straight out of the ice his quirk seemed to produce as he walked off silently to take the written part of the test. Izuku watched the dual-haired boy even closer after that. It took him a while, but eventually he clued into something. Shudo Todoroki wasn't using his full quirk. Judging from what Izuku had seen so far, it was safe to assume that heat or fire was the other half of his power. But why wasn't he using it? Especially after the race, anybody with eyes could see frost building upon the boy's hands. Clenching his fists, Izuku went to the refreshment stand and started gathering up the drinks. Izuku's cover was someone helping carry out the tests. It gave the all-or-nothing user an excellent excuse for why he was there. And the notebooks he carried around let him write down what he saw from the candidates before they were turned over to Aizawa at the end of the day. Delicious! Inesa exclaimed as Izuku passed a cup of water to another candidate. This student reminding him of a character from the old anime Attack on Titan. Izuku said, smiling awkwardly. Thank you. Large hands came out and grabbed Izuku's only free one. Your dedication to helping us is really passionate. I like you. What's your name? Izuku, the boy said, pulling back a little from the loud boy. Izuku-h Midoriya. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Sorry, my dad got remarried recently, and we changed our name. Internally Izuku winced as he lied. He had been thinking about going by Inko's maiden name when he entered UA. So why had Midori's face suddenly had popped into his head? Let's be friends, Midoriya. Inesa smiled, leaning in closer, reminding Izuku of a giant puppy. Sure. Dropping his voice, Inesa talked a little lower. You're really nice, Midoriya, but you should be more careful around Endeavor's son. Pardon? Izuku asked, his hand gripping the tray a little tighter. Endeavor's son is just like him, the wind user hissed lowly, glaring at the boy stretching off in the distance. They are dashed. Hand shooting out like a viper, Izuku used his fingers to grab Inesa's ear and twist. This was the same move that Rin would use on the Shigaraki children when they were little. No matter how big and strong you may have thought you were. Once Rin got her hands on you like this, it was all over. Now you listen here, Izuku hissed, dragging the boy closer, aware of all the eyes now watching him. This is a very stressful day for everyone here. People cope with the stress in different ways. But furthermore, if you have a problem with someone, you talk to that person directly, Izuku continued, not letting Inesa get word in. You do not go around talking behind their backs. Especially not when you just met them today. Understood? Inesa opened and closed his mouth like a fish unable to speak. Well, Izuku said, narrowing his eyes slightly and pinching the ear just a little more. Regaining his voice, Inesa pulled out of the vice grip and bowed deeply. Yes, sir. Smiling, Izuku reached down and pat the boy's shaved head. Very good. Now you drink up. The next part of the exam is starting soon. Turning and walking away, Izuku ignored the cry of, so passionate from behind him. Making his way to his target, who was in the middle of stretching, Izuku was glad the last 2 drinks hadn't gotten spilled. Shudo Todoroki, green eyes locked with suspicious gray and blue ones. Let's talk. Shudo felt unseen eyes on him the entire day. At first, he had just believed it was Endeavor. Despite multiple warnings from staff members, the flame hero continued to walk back in and yell at Shudo from the sidelines. When a section of the test was over, Endeavor would be right there grabbing his son's arm and ordering him to cease his childish tantrum. You are my masterpiece, Shudo. I gave you this power for a reason. Use it? Shudo clenched and released his right hand over and over again, trying to return feeling to it. The downside of using Mother's Ice for so long was that it would build upon his body. The frost wasn't so bad to deal with a little at a time. But Shudo had been using his right side all day, so a lot had built up. It sometimes felt like Mother was trying to reach out to Shudo through her quirk. To stop Endeavor's flames from taking over and corrupting Shudo even more so than he already was. And bury him in a world of cold ice. A cool hand reached out and covering the scar on Shudo's face, trying to chase away the voices. Delicious. Pulled from his thoughts suddenly by the loud shout, Shudo saw one of the other applicants talking to a person with green hair. Gray and blue eyes narrowed suspiciously as he observed them. Hadn't the shorter person been following their group all day? Shudo was sure he had seen the boy writing something down every time a test finished up. Was he a hero? No, he looked too young, and Endeavor had drilled all the teachers' names and faces into Shudo's head before coming here. An older student perhaps? Endeavor believed that watching the sports festival was beneath Shudo. Learning their names, faces and quirks was not worth it. The participants were just stepping stones for him to walk over on his path to being number one. Whoever the boy was though, he was strange. Shudo decided that he would have to stay away from. The boy suddenly reached out and grabbed the other's ear, pulling him down with a thunderous look. The dual quirk user, along with all the others, watched as the loud boy paled at whatever was being said. Shudo would sometimes see Natsuo with the same expression on his face when Fumi was talking to him. From what he overheard, his siblings were talking the garden about Natsuo moving out. Natsuo was trying to convince Fumi to leave also, but their sister would just argue that she couldn't leave Shudo behind. The red and white-haired boy didn't understand what he had to do with where Fumi lived. It's not like any of them were close. Especially not since Mom and... Shudo shook his head again, refocusing back on the scene before him. Yes, sir, the loud boy exclaimed again. Instantly the angry look vanished from the shorter boy's face as he pats the loud applicant's head before walking away. Towards Shudo. Smiling. Shudo Todoroki, green eyes locked with blue and gray tones. Let's talk. The hairs on the back of Shudo's neck suddenly stood up as if warning him. About? Your choice. The boy smiled brighter, kneeling down and reaching the tray out. Shudo got ready to strike. Either this was sneak attack, or this boy was a villain who had snuck into hot chocolate or green tea? Give him a drink? Technically, I should only be giving you water or juice. But we both know that won't help you right now. Green eyes flicked towards the small remnants of frost on Shudo's jacket. Will it? Turning to hide his arm, Shudo glared. I don't know what you're talking about. Did my father send you? You can tell and dash. The same hand as before reached up and settled itself on Shudo's head right where his hair parted. A scary look coming to the boy's face again. Listen here, you foolish child. I don't even know your father. The boy leaned in, careful not to spill the drinks. And if I did, I doubt he could convince me to spy on you. Or I'm guessing to tell you to use the other half of your quirk. The world froze as Shudo's eyes widened. How did you dash? I've been watching. It's not hard to guess, the boy remarked, removing his hand and sitting back again. The frost is a dead giveaway for anyone paying attention. You may want to work on that. What do you want? Shudo narrowed his eyes. For you to choose one of these drinks? Green eyes brightened as the boy smiled again. You are aware the next part involves water, right? If you don't properly warm up, I'm worried you might hurt yourself in the next test. Oh, Shudo thought, looking at the boy. This stranger was worried about the water reacting with Mother's ice and hurting Shudo. Thinking back, Shudo was pretty sure he had seen the boy helping other students stretch or offering them band-aids. Can I? The boy hummed, sitting down and placing the tray between them. Can I have the hot chocolate? Shudo whispered, feeling stupid all of a sudden. The half-hot/half-cold user had never really had hot chocolate as a kid. Endeavor had put Shudo on a strict diet the moment his quirk manifested. One time when Natsuo gave Shudo candy, he would comment that it was worse to his eldest brother. It got so bad that in those last few years there were times when the boy could barely look at certain foods without getting sick. Steam suddenly tickled Shudo's nose as he looked and saw the hot chocolate in front of him. Reaching out, the red and white-haired boy took the drink and, sipping it slightly, amazed by how delicious it was. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Izuku had to talk to Nizu quickly. Something about the way the Todoroki acted was sending off all kinds of warning bells in his head. Izuku might not be able to guarantee a spot to the ice and something user, but he could damn well make sure that an application for the dormitory was sent out. Turning the corner, Izuku ran headfirst into something. Falling backwards and rubbing his nose, Izuku looked up. Cold blue eyes framed in fire stared back as Endeavor glared down. "Watch it," the hero growled. Izuku's eyes narrowed as he got up, putting his best smile on. "Apologies for running into you, Endeavor. I should have been paying more attention." The man's glares intensified. "Just tell me where I can find the examinee group, boy." "The examinees?" Izuku faked cluelessness, placing one finger on his cheek. "Why ever would you want to know that? Heroes aren't allowed near the tests while they are ongoing." "What I do is none of your business," Endeavor snarled, taking one step into Izuku's space, grabbing the arm in his flaming hand. "Just tell me where I can find Shudo." Izuku stared at the hand for a moment before reaching over and grabbing the arm, activating his quirk slightly. Since Izuku started training all or nothing with Shoyuda, new doors he never thought possible had been unlocked. He had been able to use it to read a person's own personality through their quirk. Shuda's felt like it was there one moment and gone the next. Hisashi's was like listening to a loud song that never ended. Nedzu was always hungry for more knowledge. Nemuri reminded Izuku of perfume or smoke with the way it curled around you. Even Toshinori had offered to help Izuku practice. One for All felt like 8 suns, each with its own personality shining bright. But Endeavor's, it was stifling. It was too hot. And at the same time too cold. It felt like Izuku would get swallowed up by these flames and burned alive if he let his guard down for even a second. There was no way Izuku could let this person meet Shudo. Izuku had to protect the boy even if he didn't know it. Taking a deep breath, the time traveler looked up, glaring at Endeavor with every ounce of his anger. "Now you listen here, Endeavor," Izuku hissed, pulling out of the hero's hold and smacking his hand for added measure. "You're going to just turn around and walk away. Do you understand me?" Endeavor was immediately caught off guard by this and Izuku's sudden change in attitude. "How dare you? Do you know who I am?" Izuku wanted to smack his forehead. Didn't he just say the older Todoroki's hero name? "Do you know how much I don't care?" Izuku replied, crossing his arms over his chest. "You have already been warned, Endeavor. Multiple times, I might add, to stay away from the exam proceedings. This is your last warning before I call Nedzu. A message is here, a message is here." Whatever Endeavor was going to say was immediately silenced. In fact, the man looked like he sucked on an even more bitter lemon than usual at the sound of Toshi's voice. Opening his phone, Izuku laughed and showed the screen to the hero. "Endeavor, do as he says, or I am doubling your fine. And sending out a notice to the other hero schools regarding your son. Zakuso Nedzu." The flame hero huffed and turned to walk away. He only got a few steps before he turned around and glared at Izuku again. "You won't be able to hide behind that rat forever, you brat," Endeavor not so subtly threatened. "We will meet again." Izuku smiled sweetly and released some killing intent. For a moment, Endeavor stood there shocked before his body moved and prepared for a fight. "I'm looking forward to it, brat." Neither of the pair noticed gray and blue eyes watching them from afar, narrowing angrily as they separated. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Izuku sat with the other teachers and Toshinori as they finished going over this year's list of examinees. Technically, Toshinori and Izuku shouldn't be sitting in on this discussion seeing as they weren't official staff members. But since they would be living or working at UA in the following semester, Nedza bent the rules slightly. "So, we are all in agreement about management, correct?" Nedzu asked, holding up the last 4 folders. "We have our 12 students for the year?" A wave of various yes went from everyone. Nedzu nodded, placing his hand on a separate pile. "Our alternative students have also been chosen in case someone drops out or changes their mind." Moving on to the next topic, our new staff members are joining us today. You've already met them, but for those who haven't, this is Toshinori Yagi and Izuku Midoriya. Toshinori's eyes bugged for a second as he looked at Izuku, who sat stone-faced. "Izuku here, as you know, has been my personal student for the last year. Though he will be technically joining the hero course as a student, He will only really be taking part in the afternoon portion of classes. A murmur broke out amongst the staff. Aizawa just held in his grin, giving Vlad a smirk across the table. The underground hero was glad he won the coin toss. Vlad was a great teacher. His past students were a testament to his patience and ability to build strong heroes. But Aizawa wanted to take advantage of Izuku's status when it came to teaching and used a trick coin to get him placed in 1A. All was fair in war and napping. Netsu smiled as he leaned forward. During regular class hours, he will act as a student teacher of sorts. Izuku will be assisting teachers and helping students whenever they may be struggling. Is that legal? Midnight asked, hating to be that person. Won't the parents and students have something to say? Toshinori coughed and put his hand up. Izuku and I have been working together to get our teaching licenses. As soon as we pass our last few tests, we will both be certified educators. Excellent job, Toshinori. Izuku, Netsu clapped his paws together. Which leads to item 2. Toshinori, is you please? Oh, Ari, the blonde stammered, standing up activating one for all. Greetings, future colleagues. I am here and looking forward to learning from all of you in the incoming up year. Aizawa slid down in his seat as everyone tried to talk over each other. Now, Netsu spoke, quieting everyone down quickly. I know this might be a bit of a shock. Having All Might here, but he really does want to teach. Toshinori released his hold on One for All and pulled up his shirt showing everyone the scar. He tried to ignore the guilt as Izuku flinched at the sight of the area. As you can see, I was gravely injured 5 years ago. I got into a fight with a powerful villain and nearly died. Toshinori began explaining to everyone. Now, I can only hold my All Might form for 3 hours a day. The reason I want to teach here is that I realized something when I was recovering. Which is... Vlad King narrowed his eyes, crossing his arms. That we heroes don't always work together like we should, Toshinori answered, sitting down. The UA staff are a great example how we should behave. Heroes working together separately towards a common goal. Able to come together and help one another when times get tough. Midnight smiled like the cat who caught the canary. Flatterer. Toshinori coughed, trying to hide his reddening face. When I was recovering, I saw things from a new perspective. Or rather, I listened to someone else's perspective. I heard a man preaching about how commercialized we heroes have become. This form gave me a chance to see things from a civilian level. One of the teachers looked like they wanted to say something, but a quick glare from Aizawa shut them up. I saw a man have both his legs broken by a debuting hero for stealing some bread. Later I learned he wasn't stealing it. He was trying to return it to a woman who had left it behind. Toshinori trembled, looking at his lap feeling anger. I will never regret my choices in life. But I can no longer be blind to how things have changed since I was young. Standing up again, Toshinori bowed deeply to everyone. Please lend me your guidance. I wish to teach the next generation. Want to see the hero industry return to what it was. People using their quirks to help keep people and society safe. Well, Netsu thought, looking at the staff members. Everyone looked equal parts humbled and ashamed of themselves. Some probably thought like Aizawa did before his trip to Naboo. That Toshinori was just an empty-headed person who could only solve problems with his fists. People often forget that it takes more than just brain or brawn to stay as the #1 hero as long as All Might had. The man truly understood the best and worst in humanity and wasn't afraid to get himself dirty if it meant helping someone. Hopefully, his attitude would rub off on the incoming students no matter what course they ended up in. Netsu had already begun the background checks on most of this year's applicants. If a villain got it in their head to try and pressure one of his students, Netsu wanted to know exactly what button they pushed to turn he or she into their spy. Well said, Toshinori, Netsu smiled, banging his gavel. I suggest we all take a small break and visit the cafeteria. Lunch rush, I believe you made today's meal. Why don't we all go have some and come back in say half an hour so that we can address anyone's questions? The heroes all nodded and started making their way out of the room. Izuku, Netsu called out. Watching as the cooking hero walked up to Toshinori and started talking to him about his diet. Can we talk for a moment? Izuku looked at Toshinori and shrugged, saying he would catch up. Yes? I wanted to talk to. You about Endeavor, Nedza began. I'm proud of you for not hitting the man. Goodness knows if he didn't have the HPSC's backing, I would be tempted to have Aizawa or Detective Tsukachi look into him. Thank you, Izuku said, playing with the hem of his shirt. Can I be honest with you about something? Always. Get Shudo out of that house. Izuku looked up, eyes hardening. Something feels wrong. I don't trust Endeavor around him. Nedzu nodded. His own fur had stood on end when Endeavor had been talking about why he had recommended his son. It might be tricky. Endeavor is not so easily manipulated or swayed. But I will see what I can do. Izuku let out a sigh of relief and nodded. Was that everything? Not quite, Nedzu sighed, sliding over a piece of paper to Izuku. Printed upon it was a notice of complaint filed against UA from Endeavor and the Hero Public Safety Commission about a specific exam staff member. Normally I would ignore this and write up fake report, but I believe some of them have gotten wise to me doing so. They have strongly urged me to punish this individual or they will see to it themselves. Why that petty flaming dumb dash? Nedzu coughed. Luckily, they didn't say how I was supposed to punish you. And that got me wondering something. A devious glint entered Nedzu's black eyes. How would you like to get an up-close and personal look at some of your potential classmates with a small undercover assignment? Somewhere in the cafeteria, numerous teachers shivered, sensing the coming storm. Izuku snapped the last button on the uniform into place. Taking a deep breath, the curly-haired boy gave his best smile to the Izuku in the mirror. It was hard to think that this is what Nedzu meant. Izuku thought going undercover meant he would be doing something different when he was asked to go undercover. After all, Izuku Midoriya didn't technically exist in the system until last week. His background was entirely made by the principal and a few trusted underground individuals. There were no official documents linking back to him. And if you dug too deep, you wouldn't find any more blank space and questions. The school Izuku was going to be borrowing his faux enrollment from. A small-time institution called ALD something. In the last 5 years, no student had tried out for the exams, which made it a perfect choice. No students meant that Izuku's undercover job would go smoothly. Not that it already wouldn't. But there was still this ominous feeling inside Izuku that was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Nedzu just asked Izuku to take part in the open exams to place input on future exams from a student's perspective. Especially since he had done so well with his observations on the recommendation students. General studies and management exams were easy, and support was being handled by someone else. According to Mimi, the inventor's excited smile after she had gotten off the phone with Power Loader was infectious in the Hatsum household. Now all that was really left were the hero exams. The physical part was going to be where Izuku's true objective lay. The written portion was first thing this morning. If it was anything like the other exams, it should be a breeze. Izuku just needed to grab one last thing, and he was ready to go. Walking over and opening the desk drawer, Izuku felt his heart clench at what he saw laying innocently inside. Izuku, Toshinori's head peeked out from the hallways as he finished with his tie. Are you ready to go? Slamming the drawer shut, Izuku nodded and grabbed his bag. Brushing past Toshinori as fast as he could out the door before the man could stop him. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Izuku grabbed his knees and tried to take deep breaths as all the other examinees walked past him. There was no way what he saw was real. Toshi wouldn't. Hey loser, an angry voice came from behind Izuku. Move it. Turning around, Izuku saw a boy with blonde hair and red eyes standing behind him with an angry expression. Looking around, Izuku saw a few people had stopped to look at the point at the pair before quickly rushing ahead when green eyes met theirs. Didn't you hear me? The blonder growled, stepping closer. The scent of something sweet wafting from him. Move it, or you're dead. Izuku cocked his head in confusion. Was this kid really trying to intimidate him? Him, Izuku Shigaraki. Someone who had stared down the barrel of a gun once to protect a little boy from a deadly up-and-coming group called the Creature Rejection Clan. Smiling, Izuku put his hands up and moved out of the way. Sorry I didn't see you there. The boy's eyes narrowed as he looked at Izuku scrutinizing him. Something flashed in those red eyes for a moment before the blonde grunted and walked away. Izuku waited for a moment before following after, promptly tripping over his own feet, his shoelace not having been wholly tied as he rushed out of the apartment this morning. The ground was coming up fast when suddenly Izuku felt himself go weightless. A newer, happier voice spoke. "Sorry about using my quirk on you." A hand rested on Izuku's back, turning him upwards so that he wouldn't fall. Izuku saw a girl with short brown hair and kind but nervous eyes looking at him. "I just didn't want you to fall. Kinda felt like a bad omen, you know?" Weight returned. Izuku looked at the girl. Upon closer inspection, he saw pink pads on each of her fingers. Izuku had to stop himself from cooing at them since they reminded him of a cat. Instead, he reached in and pulled out a piece of candy and offered it to the girl. "Thank you very much for helping me," Izuku said, holding out the sweet to the girl. "Your quirk is cool. Gravity manipulation of some sort. Am I right?" For some reason, the girl seemed surprised by his gesture and quick breakdown of her quirk. Her face turned red as she danced around nervously. "Oh, no really. It's not that great." Deep breaths, Izuku coached, giving a comforting smile. "It's okay to be nervous. My sister used to tell me the trick is to have a piece of candy before going in. A quick sugar boost is all you sometimes need to really distract yourself." "Pretty obvious, huh?" the girl said, scratching one of the pink marks on her cheek. "I'm Ochako Uraraka, by the way." Izuku Midoriya, the boy offered, grabbing Ochako's coat sleeve and pulling the girl slightly. "Now come on. We don't want to be late." Ochako felt all the nervous tension that had been building inside her since she boarded the train last night disappear. In its place was what now felt like a calm sea of determination. Nodding, Ochako ran alongside her new friend, ready to face whatever came next. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Red eyes stared at Izuku as Present Mike explained the test to the students. Izuku did his best to ignore the intense gaze. "Hey, so, they would be fighting robots?" Izuku looked at the shadowed images and recognized all the shapes save for one. Hadn't Power Loader told Izuku something about his robots recently? "Hey," a whispered voice said a little harsher. A sharp poke hitting Izuku in the side harshly. "What's your class, loser?" "Huh. Excuse me," a hand shot up. A spotlight came down on the person a moment later as a boy stood up. "This printout clearly shows 4 faux villains, yet you've only talked about 3. Such a blatant mistake on official data material is shameful." A round of muttering came from the other participants. "We are all here hoping to be accepted into one of the country's top schools," the dark-haired boy continued. "Yet for such a mistake to happen is outrageous. Furthermore," the boy turned and pointed at Izuku and the boy next to him. "You two have been talking this entire time. If you aren't going to take this seriously, then leave." The blonde sneered and looked ready to say something if Izuku hadn't slapped his hands over his mouth before he could. "Sorry about that," Izuku apologized. "You're right. We should have been more respectful." The boy nodded, turning back to Present Mike. "That's right, you dash." "But it's bizarre, you know," Izuku interrupted, pulling his hand away and standing up. A spotlight of his own dropping a moment later. "I mean we're 1, 2, 3 rows up, and 5 students up and to the right of you. Do you perhaps have a quirk that increases your hearing? Is that why you singled us out like this?" A few students started giggling. On stage, Present Mike moaned. He had a feeling where this was going to happen. Why did Izuku have to get put into his group? Why couldn't he have gone to Midnight or Snipes auditoriums? Better yet, why couldn't Tensei's little robot brother be with them? "My quirk has nothing to do with my hearing," the boy defended. "Ah, I see," Izuku smiled, clapping his hands together. "Then you must be really nervous, huh? I mean, why else would you try and put us on the spot like this? Or interrupt the exam proctor before he's done explaining everything?" All right, Mike said, shaking his hands before things escalated even further. Getting back on track. To answer your question, Examinee 7111, that villain is worth 0 points. They're more of a gimmick. You can fight them if you want, but there's really no point. "I see," the boy bowed deeply. "Thank you. As for you 7060, Please keep your comments to yourself until after the exams. Mike scolded only to sigh when he received a cheeky salute in return. Moving on. Izuku zoned out for the rest of the speech instead of focusing on the boy's paper next to him, wondering what had the blonde so curious about him. Let's see. Katsuki Bakugo. Age, 15. Aldera Middle School. Exam number, wait a sec, Izuku realized, shifting his gaze slightly to look at his own exam card. Izuku Midoriya. Age, 15. Aldera Middle School. Shit. No wonder the blonde was so interested in him. Izuku's paperwork stated that they were supposed to go to the same school. And judging from what Izuku had seen of this kid's personality, this boy seemed like the type to know everyone that planned to take the exam. Izuku had a sudden urge to slam his head against the table. In the observation room, Netsu started cackling, causing a few teachers to slowly back away from the chimera. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Izuku continued to stretch his legs as he got ready for the next phase of the exam. Glancing up, he saw Ochako in the distance doing some deep breathing. Preparing yourself mentally was all well and good. But if the girl didn't do some light stretches now, she would suffer later. Planning to go over and help, Izuku tensed when a hand grabbed his shoulder suddenly. Instinct kicking in, Izuku grabbed the arm and pulled the person down. He was planning on smashing his elbow into the person's face when he quickly realized it was the same boy from the auditorium. Releasing his grip, Izuku planted his hands on his hips. "Are you insane?" he scolded. "You don't just go around grabbing people randomly." "Apologies," the boy said, his face morphing from surprise to anger as he pushed his glasses up. "I saw you going to interrupt that girl's meditation. That sort of behavior is dash." "Hey, whoa no," Izuku glared back. "Don't go accusing me of anything. You don't know me or what I was planning." "But you are the same person from the recommendation exams?" the dark-haired boy asked, not realizing about their growing audience. "Are you not?" Izuku looked confused for a moment and took a good look at the boy in front of him. When he saw the metal sticking out of his legs, he suddenly remembered who this was. "Oh hey, I remember you now," Izuku spoke, his fist hitting open palm. "You're in dash." "And begin." Activating Cheetah, Izuku took off instantly, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. Soon he was confronted by a small group of one-pointers. For some reason, as soon as the red lenses zoomed in on Izuku's form, the robots scattered. There was a blue blur as the engine kid kicked a few of them, destroying them with ease. "We aren't done talking." "Sorry," Izuku yelled, picking up a piece of discarded pipe and smacking it against his palm. "Smash now. Talk later." After what he had seen in Toshinori's desk this morning, Izuku had been looking for something to vent on. Looking at a two-pointer, when it rounded the corner, the green-haired boy smirked. "Here, robot, robot, robot." Launching at the metal figure, Izuku wasn't sure how many he smashed with his pipe. Vaguely in the background, he could hear present Mike calling out the remaining time. Things went smoothly from there. Izuku smashed robots to his heart's content, venting his frustration, stopping only to give pipes and other makeshift weapons to the other examinees when he saw them struggling. One guy with purple hair glared at Izuku when he pulled him out of the blast range of an exploding three-pointer. Izuku had just smiled and shoved a long pipe into his hand. "Aim for the eyes and joints. That's where they're weakest." Before the boy could respond, the ground started shaking as something rose up, parting the buildings. The all-or-nothing user couldn't hold in the gasp of shock when he saw the zero-pointer looming over them. "Are they insane?" the purple-haired boy asked, hands clenching the pipe tighter. "That thing's worth 0 points?" Taking a deep breath, Izuku stilled his mind, Viridian eyes hardening as he reached out and grabbed the boy's shoulders. "It's too big. Grab as many people as you can and get out of here." "But dash. Go," Izuku ordered, looking and seeing Engine Kid running towards them. "Hey, Speedy. Help evac the others." The boy slid to a halt next to Izuku, glaring at him. "We're already doing that." "Listen to me," Izuku said, getting right in the boy's face. "Purple, you direct the others. Speedy, make sure no one gets left behind." "Who put you in charge?" the pair asked together. 1 minute left, listeners. Izuku was about to yell at the pair again when he heard it. A small cry of pain from behind him. Looking back, he saw Ochako pinned underneath some concrete. Right in front of the zero-pointer's path. Grabbing the long pipe from Purple's hand, Izuku ran towards the robot without a second thought. "Hi!" he shouted at the robot. Numerous red lenses zoomed in on the figure below and froze just like the others for a split second when they realized who was in front of them. That split second was all Izuku needed as he leaned back and activated all or nothing using the added power and throwing as hard as he could. Lightning from the quirk enveloped the makeshift javelin as it hit the center eye. The zero-pointer rolled backwards, a little large arm coming up to protect its face. Using this time, Izuku activated Cheetah again and ran to Ochako. "Me Midoriya," the girl said, looking scared. "That hurts?" Izuku reached out and placed his hand on the girl's head, smiling at her. "It's okay, Ochako. I got you." The rumbling started up again, and the pair turned towards the zero-pointer as it began heading towards them again. Izuku stood up and cracked his knuckles. This move wasn't perfect yet, but Ochako watched in amazement as lightly built up around Midoriya's hands and feet. White tendrils of light seemed to explode from his fingers. 1 second, Izuku was on the ground with her, and that next, he was grabbing onto the zero-pointer's chest and swinging upwards. Izuku landed on what could be the robot's elbow and started climbing. 30 seconds. All Izuku had to distract the robot for half a minute. Dodging an incoming hand, Izuku did his best to scurry up the arm he was on. As soon as he reached the shoulder area, he activated all or nothing again, letting the tendrils curl around the robot's joint. Then summoning vibration, a quirk that could literally vibrate things, Izuku took a deep breath and jumped. 15 seconds. To the teachers in the observation area, all eyes seemed to focus on Izuku the instant he jumped. There was a moment of silence as they all watched the coiled white lights that Izuku had wrapped around the zero-pointer titan. Like a hot knife through butter, the arm separated from the main body, throwing the zero-pointer's balance off. A roar of applause rang throughout the room save from 2 people. Toshinori and Aizawa, however, both watched in horror instead as all or nothing evaporated. And Izuku began to free fall. Izuku tried activating his quirk again. Using all or nothing like this took a lot of stamina and focus. Maybe he could have activated it again. But falling from such a height was not doing Izuku's mental state any favors. 5. Okay, Izuku thought. Stay focused, look around. There has to be something I can grab onto. Did Izuku have a quirk that he could use to cushion his fall? Plump wouldn't work. All that quirk would just turn him into a bigger smear of the ground. 3. Was there something he could grab onto? A dislocated shoulder might be better than dying. 2. Izuku was so focused on staying alive, he never noticed the hand reaching out for him until... Thrown to the side, Izuku floated there for a moment in shock. Turned his head and saw Ochako also floating next to him on a piece of a destroyed robot. Release. Ochako groaned, her face one of pain. 1. Time's up. Izuku immediately fell towards the ground and scrambled over to the girl. Ochako looked up, giving a strained smile before promptly throwing up. Jumping up onto the robot's head, Izuku started patting her back. "Are you okay?" The answer came in the form of a thumbs up before another bout of rainbow vomit escaped from Ochako. A crowd started to gather before a familiar voice that brought a smile to Izuku's face. Well done, Recovery Girl praised as the students parted. "Candy for everyone." "Who is she?" a random student asked as he took the offered candy. "That mademoiselle is the backbone of you," Izuku heard a blonde with a French accent and large belt say. "The youthful heroine, Recovery Girl. She's why the school can hold these sorts of exams." "Sorry in advance, Ochako." Izuku apologized. "Wash hey," the girl said before being swept up in a princess hold by Izuku. Izuku walked the girl over to the school nurse, gently setting Ochako down on some rubble near her. Nausea, quirk exhaustion, and a sprained or possibly broken ankle. "Let's get you to the infirmary then, dearie," Recovery Girl nodded, looking at the already swelling area. Luckily for this girl, Yue anticipated something like this, which is why one of the gyms was filled to the brim with beds for patients to sleep on after she saw them. A little nap and maybe some food from the cafeteria were really all the children needed before being sent home to await their results. Dark eyes turning to Izuku, the school nurse frowned. "And what about you?" Izuku opened his mouth to say that he was fine when he suddenly felt lightheaded. Swaying a little, the last thing he saw was the scared faces of the other examinees. Before the world went black and he passed out. Of all the stupid dash. Izuku slowly sat up, gratefully taking some of the candy recovery girl passed him. "Reckless things you could have done dash." Izuku hummed in appreciation at the cherry flavor. "Are you stupid? Do you have a death wish?" Now Aizawa. Toshinori smiled at the underground hero. It wasn't that he disagreed with what the man was saying. But Izuku had just regained consciousness. He was probably only half listening to the lecture. Blue eyes turned and fixed on Izuku, showing great concern. "I'm sure Izuku here had a plan. Right, Izuku?" The boy said suddenly, the subject of 3 very intense gazes. "I had like 5/8 of a plan." Aizawa looked ready to explode. "Why would you even attempt to take the 0-pointer on if you didn't think that you could beat it?" Recovery girl asked. She couldn't help but wonder if this sort of behavior was an inherited trait from the first Shigaraki. One that carried over to every person to receive one for all. Toshinori certainly acted this way when he was in school, Nana also. "I don't know. Why does this school have a giant robot that can crush people to death?" Izuku snapped back. Realizing his tone a second later, the boy looked down, feeling ashamed. "Sorry. Ochako is really nice, and she could have gotten hurt. And she was trapped under debris, one wrong move and well, I just kinda moved before realizing it." There was a collective sigh from the group. Sometimes it was hard for them to remember that Izuku had come from a world where fighting for your life was a normal, everyday thing. Aizawa as an underground hero is especially sympathetic. As someone who worked hundreds of some of the worst cases imaginable, he knew how hard it was to let go of that mindset, where 1 second of hesitation could lead to someone dying. Many of the incoming students were so blinded by the money and fame they could receive as heroes that they forgot this. Heroes must always be willing to sacrifice themselves for people. That was what the HPSC preached. However, finding true heroes that were willing to do that was few and far between. It was why Nedzu always released the 0-pointer during the test. The principal always felt like it was an excellent way to see which students this statement talked about. But it had been a long time since someone tried to take the 0-pointer on. Even longer since had done it to help another examinee. Aizawa sighed and leaned down, grabbing Izuku's head and forcing him to meet his eye. "Listen here, problem child dash." "Problem child?" Izuku flailed around. "I'm older than you." "Zip it." Dark hair started floating, causing Izuku to squeak and sit up a little straighter. "Next training session, we will be going over everything you did wrong during the exam. Staring from your behavior with Mike to the passing out. Am I understood?" Izuku sat there feeling very afraid for his next training session. He opened and closed his mouth a few times before surrendering and nodding. Toshinori and Recovery Girl just sighed in acceptance. "All right then," Aizawa nodded, standing up and turning around to walk away. Glancing back at Izuku one last time. "And next time you want to do something so stupid like that, have a plan ready so that you don't have to be the one in need of rescuing. Uraraka won't always be around to save you." Izuku brightened up instantly. "Wait, does that mean dash? She's got a good shot judging from what I saw of her points." Aizawa gave the thumbs up before walking away. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Katsuki slammed the door to the classroom shut. Another lunch wasted hunting for that freckled-faced loser. Sitting down and leaning back, the explosion user thought about it. Katsuki was positive that the nerd's exam card had the same name as this shitty school. But all attempts to locate said nerd had come up empty. Nobody in this shitty place aside from Katsuki had even taken the UA general exams. Much less the hero course. They all knew what Katsuki would have done to them if they dared try. The few of the students who had been absent recently looked nothing like the mystery student. And the teachers had never even heard of an Izuku Midoriya before. It was possible that the weakling might have been a UA plant. But Katsuki seriously doubted that the school would need to do such a thing. Which left only one possibility. Izuku Midoriya must be a villain. Or a spy, at the very least. One that nobody knew about. A vicious smile came to the blonde's face as he took out his notebook, opening it up to a new page. But instead of writing down his teacher's lecture on mathematics, Katsuki started writing down everything he could remember about the weakling. His teachers had always told Katsuki that he was brilliant, that with his quirk, he would be a top hero in no time. It wasn't hard to see that they were trying to manipulate the explosion user, brag about how they were the ones who always believed in the future #1. Or maybe use his lessons to all the weakling losers at Aldria to try and get something from Katsuki later. If Katsuki played his cards right and exposed Izuku Midoriya or whatever his name was to the UA staff, they would no doubt come to realize just how great Katsuki was as well. The other pebbles that made up his future class would return to their proper places as stepping stones for Katsuki's rise to greatness. They could brag later how remarkable Katsuki was when they were struggling D-list sidekicks. Maybe if Katsuki played his cards right, Yurei might even let him skip a grade. Or graduate early if he exposed Izuku Midoriya. Katsuki was going to be bigger and richer than even All Might himself. And it all started here. The students surrounding Bakugo shivered, leaning away from the explosive blonde. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Hitoshi sat in the bedroom cuddling the worn-out cat plush that had been with him since before he entered foster care. It wasn't fair. He had been so close to getting into the hero course. Just a few more points, and Hitoshi could have proven everyone wrong about his quirk. But why did some people get blessed with hero quirks? Well, Hitoshi was stuck as a villain? There was a knock on the door. Looking up, Hitoshi saw his grandmother staring back at him. Well, Hitoshi looked away, ashamed. He had really wanted to do her proud. His grandparents were the first people since the car crash that believed in him. A wrinkled hand placed itself on Hitoshi's shoulder, pulling him into a tight hug. Don't worry, you got General right. It's only a matter of time before you're kicking ass and arresting people. It's just not fair, Hitoshi said, leaning into the hug. I worked so hard. I know, kitten, his grandmother spoke, kissing the top of Hitoshi's head. Goodness, you remind me so much of Eric sometimes. He was always trying to get things done as fast as possible that he forgot that sometimes it's better to go slow. Eric had been Hitoshi's grandfather. The man had passed away a few years ago. Eric had once been a certified villain who went by Cobra and ran with a fairly notorious gang. When they had finally been caught, the media had been tipped off that the gang members had all been raised as child soldiers. In a surprising twist, the public demanded that they be reformed rather than punished. His grandmother Kin-Ana, despite her transformation quirk, had been deemed a failure and thrown aside. Hitoshi wasn't sure how his grandfather found his grandmother years later, especially since she had lost her memories. All he knew was that the two loved each other more than anyone else Hitoshi had seen. Something else came for you as well, Kin-Ana said, pulling out a small letter and passing it to Hitoshi. Opening it up, a small booklet lay inside. Pulling it out, the pair started reading through it. The contents were all about the UA Sports Festival. If a student did well enough, they would be given a chance to transfer into the hero course. A small piece of paper fluttered out when Hitoshi flipped the page. On it was a single line and the drawing of a small black cat sleeping, music notes surrounding them. You have good instincts. And you remind me of another hero I know. So don't stress too much. And try to build up your physical strength, though, till the right time comes. Hitoshi felt a warm sensation in his chest. One of the UA teachers had sent him a note encouraging him. Someone besides his family saw potential in Hitoshi. All he needed to do was get stronger, and then Hitoshi would be one step closer to his dream. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Waiting, Tensei found, was always the hardest part. Glancing over, Tensei saw Tenya sitting on the floor stiff as a board. The brothers had been waiting for the mailman to arrive all day. So, I heard a funny joke today. Want to hear it? The younger Ida said nothing. He just continued to stare at the door. A moment later, as if on cue, there was the sound of something being dropped into the mailbox. Tensei had never seen Tenya move so quickly in training as when he dove towards the metal box. A second later, a hollow disc fell to the floor, lighting up as All Might appeared on it. "Booyah. I am here as a projection." Tensei turned his head to stop himself from laughing. He truly respected the number one, but the guy was so over the top sometimes. "Tenya Ida, you passed the written exam in the top 10. You must have worked very hard to achieve your score." Tensei glanced over, noticing that his little brother was practically vibrating with joy from the praise. "I know that you took both the recommended and open exams. I'm sorry you had to wait so long, but you passed the exam with your score on the practical. Congratulations on your results, and welcome to UA's Hero course." The hologram turned itself off a moment later, leaving both brothers staring. Before Tenya could say anything, Tensei leaned over and pulled his little brother into a huge hug. "You did it, Tenya. Congratulations." Tensei knew that Tenya had worked hard for this. Failing the recommendation exams had really bummed his little brother out. The hero had wanted to say something but was waiting to see the results of the open exams first. Tenya was a good kid with a big heart. He looked up to his older brother and parents so much, always saying how much he wanted to be a hero just like they were. And pretty soon that day would come. Tensei couldn't wait to see the day Ingenium and Tenya work together to make the city a better place. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Ochako looked through the latest apartment rental listings. Her job delivering papers didn't pay much, but she had been saving. If she could just pay a few months' rent, then everything should be okay. And maybe if the gravity user was lucky, she could find a part-time job in Mustafa. Nothing too time-consuming so she could keep up with her studies. Maybe tutoring was something to look into? Opening indoor, Ochako kicked off her shoes. "I'm home." "Dad?" "In here, sweetie." Her mother's voice rang out from the kitchen. Heading further into the apartment, Ochako found her parents at the table looking at something. A serious look on their faces. "What's wrong?" the brunette asked, looking worried. Uraraka's mom smacked her husband's arm. "It's nothing, sweetie. Actually, we have some good news for you." "Good news?" Ochako's father pouted, crossing his arms like a child. "My sweet baby girl's gonna be surrounded by vicious beasts. And you call it good news?" "Oh, hush dear," the older brunette hissed, turning back before smiling at her daughter. "This came in the mail today." The Uraraka matriarch slid something over as Ochako sat down. Opening it up, she was surprised to see that the book contained information about UA's new dormitories. Dormitories that were rent-free for all UA students currently enrolled. Flipping through the book to the layout of the rooms and common areas, it was clear to see that the school had not skipped on the price. The principal made sure that everything their students could possibly need was included in the design. "We'd obviously send you money for food and necessities. But what do you think?" Mrs. Uraraka asked, taking Ochako's hand. "Next weekend, there's an open house for new students to see the dorms, but next week..." That explained her parents' faces when she walked in. Next weekend both her parents were going to be working at a site. There was no way either of them would have time to take Ochako to see the dorm. "That's all right," Ochako smiled, a plan already forming. "I'll still get to see the dorms on move-in day." "Honey dash. I'm gonna go get changed and start my homework." The gravity user stood up quickly. "Let me know when dinners are ready, okay?" Hastily rushing to her room, Ochako closed the door, slumping to the ground. She let out a deep sigh before she got a determined look on her face. The paper didn't explicitly say that a parent or chaperone was needed. As long as she planned everything right, Ochako could dip into some of her savings to spend the night in a hotel before coming home the next day. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Fumi crinkled the papers in her hand as she walked down the hall. Every step felt like a new weight was added, but the woman knew she had to do this. When the information regarding the dorms was sent to her and not her father, Fumi was confused. "Liar, you know precisely why it was sent to you." Shudo sitting on the veranda as he applied bandages to his fresh bruises. Fumi watching from behind a corner, a first aid kit in hand. Reaching her youngest brother's room, Fuyumi stood there timidly, wishing Natsuo was here with her. The college student would have no problems talking to Shudo about this. In fact, Natsuo would encourage Shudo to leave just like he had. Pushing a stray tear away, Fuyumi wished that her mom or Tuyo were still here. Reaching up, the woman readied herself to knock on the door. "Fuyumi?" Shudo's voice rang out from behind her, startling the teacher. Turning around, she saw Shudo standing there, a fresh bandage on his cheek. "What are you doing here?" Do you know where Dad is?" Fuyumi asked, afraid that their father was going to jump out any second. Shudo shrugged. "Endeavor got a call and had to go deal with something." "Oh good." Fuyumi sighed in relief, holding the envelope tighter to her chest. Can we talk?" Shudo shrugged again and reached over, opening the door for his sister. Fuyumi nervously made her way inside, seeing that the room was just as bare as it always was. A bed, desk and wardrobe were all that lay inside. No photos, posters or trinkets scattered around. Shudo's room was more like a prison cell than a teenager's bedroom. "Shuto, are you happy?" Fuyumi blurted out, suddenly gasping and covering her mouth a second later. "I knew that came out wrong. I mean dash. I'm not unhappy," the red and white-haired boy shrugged again, taking the towel he had been wearing and wiping his forehead. "I have a roof over my head and food to eat. What more should I want? Everything. You should be happy. You should have friends and..." Smile. "When did you stop smiling, Shudo? Do you want to leave?" Fuyumi asked, taking her brother's face in her hands. "If you could leave, would you?" Endeavor wow dash. "Would you leave?" Shudo looked away, unable to meet Fuyumi's eyes, whispering, "Yes." It hurt for Fuyumi to hear. Somewhere deep inside, she childishly wished that Shudo didn't want to leave, that he would stay and help her make them a family again. Instead, she pulled her youngest brother into a tight embrace. "Next weekend, you and I are going on a trip. But dash. Don't argue with me, Shudo," Fuyumi spoke softly. Just trust me, okay?" Second, later arms timidly wrapped themselves around Fuyumi, returning the hug. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. "Don't." Izuku yelled at Toshinori, pushing the man away. "Izuku dash. No. This is my life," the boy yelled, pointing at the innocent-looking phone. "You still don't believe I'm me. And you're upset that I would want to be a hero. When you of all people should know better than anyone else why I want to be dash." The person on the other end was silent. "And you?" Izuku turned to point at Toshinori. "Don't be nice to me when you're just going to leave me behind too," Izuku yelled, walking over to the desk, pulling out all the apartment listings, throwing them on the table. "If you didn't want to live with me, all you had to do was say something." Toshinori opened his mouth. He knew he should have talked to Izuku about this when he started looking for a new apartment. But number one had wanted to surprise him so badly. "Well, guess what? I'm leaving instead. I'll live in one of the completed dorm rooms, or Nedzu. As for you, Hisashi, call me when you pull your head out of your ass. Or don't call me at all." Grabbing his jacket, Izuku stormed out, slamming the door before Toshinori could stop him. Sighing, the number one hero sat down, looking at the papers. "It is really him, isn't it?" a small hopeful voice asked over the speaker. "This isn't a trick, is it all might? Or a ploy? That's really my Izuku. He's finally come back to me." "Yes, all for one," the hero nodded. "How?" Toshinori opened his mouth. Izuku had been acting strange lately. Toshinori's self-proclaimed uncle hadn't been acting like himself since waking up after the open exams. The boy had been weirdly distant towards Toshinori. At first, the blonde had just thought that it was because Izuku was nervous about the upcoming school year. Learning privately from Nedzu and hanging out with this year's Big Three was different than actually attending classes. Not to mention teaching them. Toshinori was nervous himself about the students respecting him as an educator rather than the number one hero. Izuku, on the other hand, would have to worry more about the students listening to him because he was the same age they were. And if that wasn't enough last night, Izuku mentioned moving into the dorms early and helping set up the open house. At first, Toshinori had let it go. Izuku was always trying to help someone. But later, the more he thought about it, the more clear it became that something was off. Holding the takeout container's handle a little tighter, Toshinori waited patiently for the elevator. Ever since Mirai's visit to Might Tower, the other office workers had started fussing over Toshinori. People once whispered if he could even do his job as All Might's secretary. Now they whispered how cool and professional Toshinori had been handling the ex-sidekick of the #1 hero. So, asking one of the office ladies what the best place to get Katsudon was. Before long, Toshinori was swarmed by a group of women, all offering up the same name. Tonight, well, Izuku was eating his food and Toshinori would bite the bullet and ask him if everything was alright. Sliding the key into the door, the hero nearly dropped the food. Schools, All for One's voice rang out. I don't see why it has to be you. Nedzu has been very kind teaching me about what I've missed out on Hisashi, Izuku answered back smoothly. Creeping closer, Toshinori let out a small sigh of relief when he saw Izuku talking into his phone. And I want to help people? Then come with me, the villain pleaded on the other end. You could be a doctor, a lawyer. Hell, even a politician like I was. Just not a hero. If those jobs didn't interest me 200 years ago, why would you think they would interest me now? The boy answered, sighing and slumping against the table. Toshinori took this as a cue and went to the kitchen to dish out the food. As much as the hero hated All for One, interrupting Izuku's talk with him just felt petty. Plus, we both know I don't have the right temper to do what you did, Izuku continued chuckling slightly. I'm a hands-on type of person. Sitting behind a desk all day never really appealed to me, but being a spandex-wearing idiot who punches people does? All for One hissed. I know you're listening, All Might. So, tell me, Mr. #1 hero. Do you honestly think my brother can be a hero? Especially if society knew about his connection to me? Toshinori froze at the question directed at him. The soup he purchased for himself dripped lazily into the bowl from his spoon. Hisashi, what are you talking about? Izuku asked, sounding confused. I know you've been living with my enemy Izuku, the man hissed lower. Both males felt a shiver run up his spine at the tone. Don't lie to me. Hisashi I dashed. Was it funny, All Might? Pretending that my brother was alive just to trick me, All for One continued to ask. However, did you ever find out about him? Or create such a brilliant-looking fake? Toshinori walked out of the kitchen and towards the table. Glancing at Izuku, he saw the boy's face and became furious. Izuku looked like he had it Naboo when he told everyone about his family's deaths. It was as though everything inside him had been hollowed out, leaving nothing but a shell behind. Enough, All for One, the hero slammed his hand on the table. Just enough. I don't know what you think you're accusing me of, but Izuku is real. And how could you possibly know that? Because Tamura told me so, Toshinori answered, earning a gasp from the pair. Looking at Izuku, Toshinori felt guilt for not telling him sooner. I meant to tell you about the dream, Izuku. Tamura was there, and we were in a garden. He thanked me for finding you. There was a slight pause from the villain. As if I would ever believe a thief like you, Yagi. Izuku angrily hissed at the phone. Toshi isn't a thief. He's family. He's a thief just like all the others, All for One argued back. They take Tamura's quirk and pass it along as though it belongs to them. It's mine. He was my brother. Toshinori's heart gave a sudden lurch in his chest. He was my brother too. Izuku yelled, rising to his feet. Tamura gave someone his quirk. It connected us to them. It made them part of our family. It gave me Toshinori. Without him, I would be alone. You could have come to me, All for One yelled back. I could have protected you. Kept you safe. Made sure that I was real, the green-haired brother snapped. You still don't think I'm a trick, don't you, Hicken? It's clear now you've been spying on me. Would you have put me in a vault like you did, Tamura? Try to figure out like those puzzles you did when you were a kid. Toshinori winced, feeling like this was starting to get out of hand. This world isn't safe, All for One answered, an emotion Toshinori had never heard from the man before seeping into his words. It never was. Maybe the vault was a bad idea in the long run, but I have to keep Tamura safe. You weren't there. You didn't see how bad things got? That's why I have to do this. Izuku answered, all the tension in his body melting away. Because I wasn't there. We lost Inko. We lost Mikumo. Our home, the place with so many wonderful memories, was ripped away from us. All for One was silent, so Izuku continued. Then you lost me and Tamura. You were alone for so long, Hisashi. I don't think you really get it anymore. The reason I want to be a hero is because I can't lose anyone else. Being one of the spandex-wearing idiots, as you called them, gives me that chance to make sure that doesn't happen. Tashinori leaned in, planning to hug the boy, only to be pushed away. Don't. Izuku yelled at Tashinori, pushing the man away. Izuku dash. No. This is my life, the boy yelled, pointing at the innocent-looking phone. You still don't believe I'm me. And you're upset that I would want to be a hero. When you of all people should know better than anyone else why I want to be dash. The person on the other end was silent. And you. Izuku turned to point at Tashinori. Don't be nice to me when you're just going to leave me behind, too, Izuku yelled, walking over to the desk. Pulling out all the apartment listings, throwing them on the table. If you didn't want to live with me, all you had to do was say something. Tashinori opened his mouth. He knew he should have talked to Izuku about this when he started looking for a new apartment. But number one had wanted to surprise him so much. Well, guess what? I'm leaving instead. I'll live in one of the completed dorm rooms or Nedzu. As for you, Hisashi, call me when you pull your head out of your ass. Or don't call me at all. Grabbing his jacket, Izuku stormed out, slamming the door before Tashinori could stop him. Sighing, the number one hero sat down, looking at the papers. Is really him, isn't it? A small hopeful voice asked over the speaker. This isn't a trick, is it All Might? Or a ploy? That's really my Izuku. He's finally come back to me. Yes, all for one. The hero nodded. How? Tashinori opened his mouth and began telling his greatest enemy everything. All for one listened to the hero's story from start to finish. Dug his fingernails into the chair arms when All Might explained that he was the one who asked Izuku not to tell him that the current one for all user had taken him in. He did so because he was worried about how the villain would take the news. It was strange. For some reason it felt like All for One was sitting across the table from Tashinori. The hero always thought one of them would be captured or dying before they had an actual conversation. When Tashinori was done, the villain was quiet. Far quieter than he ever thought possible. At first, the blonde thought that the phone's battery had run out and got up to get the charging cable. 3 times, All for One finally spoke. Izuku has come back into my life 3 times? Tashinori looked confused as he plugged the phone in just to be safe. What do you mean? A slight bitter laugh came from All for One. A few years after Tamura passed away, I was contacted by someone claiming to be Izuku, the villain answered. They spoke of being imprisoned after the bombing and had finally broken out and wanted to come home. I was so overjoyed that I ran straight into a trap. And since I didn't have as many healing or longevity quirks, I nearly died. Tashinori resisted the urge to snort in disbelief. The next time was during who you would call the thirds period with One for All. All? No, Hisashi Shigaraki continued. Tashinori didn't know the man well, but he could almost picture him curling up on the chair. Despite his colossal frame hugging one knee like Izuku did. We were both contacted that time and lured to a small island. We fought, never noticing the small army that had gathered to kill us. I understand you, Tashinori spoke, sitting on the opposite side of the table from the phone. But what did Third do? Each of us was the leaders of 2 of the largest quirk movements at the time, the man answered, chuckling slightly. Third was a strange man. Raised as a weapon since he was young. And he took everything so literally. You can imagine fighting someone like that, how frustrating it could be when you're, never mind. Alright, what about the third time? Fourth's era, Hisashi mused, remembering the past users. Amnesia was the ploy this time. Izuku claimed to have lost his memory. Moved on and got married and even had kids and now grandkids that he wanted me to meet. I was smarter that time though. Did my research, Hisashi spoke, a heavy sadness in his voice. It was a long-time plan in the making. The person they tricked into believing he was Izuku really did have amnesia. Medical documents I got my hands on fit with the injuries he could have sustained in the bombing. The timeline matched up that I was so sure that time it was him. But it wasn't. Toshinori sighed. The man's behavior with Izuku was now starting to make sense. 3 times he had thought his family was alive. And 3 times, it proved to be a lie. The house was rigged. Hitoshi spoke softly, the weight of his words not fully reaching the hero for a moment. 9 people dead. 6 adults, 3 children. The youngest is not even a year old. Toshinori wanted to throw up hearing this. After that, Hitoshi spoke, the mask of all for one slipping back on. I just couldn't do it anymore. I had to accept that Izuku was dead and never coming back. No, you didn't. Toshinori shook his head, remembering Nabu. I've seen the graves. 7 markers, each one was for a different holder. I've seen in dash. A loud slamming sound came from the other end. Don't you dare say her name. Either of theirs. All right, the blonde nodded, finding the edge of the villain's goodwill. But I never saw one for Izuku. You may not have said it out loud, but I don't think you never really gave up on finding him. All for one gave a small chuckle. How strange it is to be comforted by the man who almost killed me. The feeling is mutual, Toshinori said, placing a hand on his side. Almost as bizarre as finding out that you know where I live and that I had come home. There was a slight noise, almost like a snort of the other end. I've always known Yagi. I just find killing one's enemy in their home so cliché and uninspired. Somehow, that doesn't make me feel better, Toshinori said, pulling the apartment listings Izuku had thrown at him closer. I have rules. You may not believe me dash. I do. Toshinori interrupted. Torino and I know about Nana. We talked to Ring Master. We know you didn't kill her husband. That you were actually furious when you found out. I see, all for one said on the other end. It might not seem like much, but I searched for the leak. Shimura was not my favorite holder, but her family did not deserve what happened. As for her child, Kotaro. Toshinori sat up straighter, feeling scared for the only living link he still had to Nana. Take heart in this. I knew where Kotaro Shimura was from when Nana left him at that orphanage. But neither I nor anyone in my organization ever laid a hand on him. This weight inside Toshinori lifted at the words. Thank you. There was now an awkward silence between the pair. I should go and find Izuku, Toshinori said, standing up. He's probably cooled down enough that I can talk to him now. He's at the beach, all for one offered up. The one you had him clean. Toshinori bit his tongue. Didn't all for one realize that his spying was part of the reason that Izuku had stormed out in the first place? Perhaps Izuku is right. I think I need to sort out some things before we reunite, the villain said. But I will be watching all might. If I think for one moment you or Nedzu are taking advantage of my brother, I will come at you both with everything I have. I look forward to you trying all for one. There was a slight pause before the call ended. Toshinori let out a small sigh of relief before heading to grab his coat. Eyes looking at the food on the counter sadly. Thank goodness for microwaves. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Izuku hugged the small body close, trying to absorb its body heat. The canine's gray and black fur tickled his nose. Izuku had almost walked by the abandoned dog, leash tied to one of the railings of the fence. A mocking sign next to them reading, "To a good home, love." As soon as Hazel met Angry Green, Izuku decided that the dog was coming home with him. He wasn't exactly sure where home was right now, but the dog would always have a place there. Perhaps the dorm would like to have its very own mascot? Convincing Nedzu wouldn't be too hard. Izawa, on the other hand, Izuku, a voice came from behind, causing the boy to stiffen. Can we talk? Izuku didn't say anything, just clutched the dog tighter, earning a slight whine from them. A few seconds later, a body sat next to him on the sand. Reaching out and scratching the dog's ears, earning a slight growl from the canine. The dog seemed to sense Izuku's displeasure with Toshinori and clearly choosing their side. I know you're mad at me, Toshinori began looking out at sea. I should have told you what I was doing. Then why didn't you? Izuku wanted to say. You came into my life so suddenly. I don't regret taking you in, but... Toshinori continued. I knew as soon as you and Nedzu began planning the dormitories, you were going to leave. I was okay with that. You're old enough to decide where you want to live. I just wanted to surprise you later when you came home with an actual bedroom. Izuku jerked up, looking wide-eyed at the blonde. What? Izuku, your room is basically just a cot in my guest room. I may have started moving all the gifts my fans have given me to the office, but it's still a far cry from an actual bedroom. Toshinori explained. So you're not leaving me? Izuku whispered. Of course not, we're family. Toshinori smiled, placing one arm around Izuku and pulling him closer. At the end of the day, you are still my favorite uncle. Izuku gave a watery laugh and returned the hug, feeling the dog slip out of his hold. The canine ran away quickly before turning and barking at the pair. Toshinori inspected the dog closely. Guess I should look for a place that allows pets too. Though I'm not sure what breed he is. I think he's a mix, but one of his parents was defiantly a corgi. Izuku held his arms out, gray and black, immediately diving into them. Look at his ears and little legs. You're just a bundle of sunshine wrapped in a storm cloud, aren't you? Aren't you? The dog barked happily, licking Izuku's face before dashing off towards the water. Seconds later, Izuku and Toshinori joined the dog, enjoying peace only the cool night air and sea could offer them. Amajiki stumbled a little at the surprisingly firm grip pulling him. All the manifest user wanted to do right now was go home. Curl up in a dark room with his favorite snack. And not come out unless Fat Gum called or school started back up. But no. Instead, he was here, helping Mirio and Nijire with the open house for the dorms. At first, Amajiki had tried to say he was busy. But like usual, the dark-haired hero was weak against the pair's bright smiles and had reluctantly agreed to help. At least sure, Midoriya had arranged it to the manifest user working in the kitchen. Amajiki's own knowledge of food, coupled with his surprising skills in the kitchen. It made him the perfect partner for lunch rush. If only he hadn't stepped outside for a small break. Then those terrifying golden eyes wouldn't have been able to pin Amajiki down. The boy was frozen just long enough for a pink bundle to be shoved into his arms before running away, screaming a girl's name. Are you sure this is the way? The little girl turned around, looking up at Amajiki. Everything looks the same. Looking around at the nearest building, Amajiki quickly realized that the girl was right. They had gone around in a circle. Crouching down, a familiar dark cloud settles over Hiro. I want to go home. Mimi wasn't sure what to do. Her mom had told her that the pointy-eared boy would take her to Izuku. The pair had looked away for just 1 second. That 1 second that their backs were turned was all May had needed to disappear. Probably off in search of one of the school's support workshops. If Mimi couldn't find Izuku, how could Mom find her? Sniffling slightly, Mimi tried to hold back the tears, but the thought of never seeing her mom or sister again. But it just hurt too much. Throwing her head back, the girl crouched down and started crying too. Wah! Instantly the dark cloud of depression over Amajiki vanished and was replaced with something worse. He hadn't meant to make the little girl cry. What sort of hero makes a little girl cry? Please don't cry. Amajiki held his hands out, stopping just short of pink hair. Suddenly the manifest user was afraid to making things worse. Oh, what would Mirio do in this situation? A light bulb went off inside Amajiki's head. Pulling out the small bag of sugar candy he always kept with him and holding it out. Here, look, I have candy. The girl looked up before a sharp bark made the pair jump. The hero student barely had time to react before something dark rushed Amajiki and knocked him over. Whatever was on top of him was trying to get the candy, but the manifest user knew he had to protect it. Ah, Pochi no, a heavenly voice came before the weight on Tamaki's chest disappeared. Sorry about him, Tami. We're still learning manners. Aren't we, Pochi? The dog barked as if in agreement. For a moment, Amajiki swore he saw a bright light surrounding Izuku as he held the squirming dog in arms. Put the dog down with a sharp look. Izuku held his hand out towards the fallen third year. Izuku! A small pink form rushed out and attached themselves to Izuku's leg. The boy looked surprised for a second before realizing who it was. Mimi? What are you doing here? Where's your mom or May? Why, Izuku? Mimi cried as Izuku leaned down, picking her up with ease. May disappeared. Mom went to look for her and left me with the sad boy. We were looking for you but got lost. Where were you? Why didn't you come to find us sooner? Izuku smiled and pat Mimi's head. Sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to come to find you. What sort of Prince Charming doesn't come looking for the princess? Mimi huffed, crossing her arms. Izuku chuckled internally. Mimi had taken to calling Izuku Prince Charming just like Mei had. Only where the inventor used it to tease Izuku. Mimi believed wholeheartedly that Izuku was some kind of storybook hero who would always win. One who trusts one of the kingdom's best knights to look after said princess. Izuku ruffled pink hair smiling at Amajiki. Thanks for looking after Mimi here, Tamaki. Oh the manifest user twiddled his thumbs nervously. It's no problem. And sorry again that Pochi jumped you. Izuku mock glared at the dog. Pochi barked happily in return, spinning around, slightly tongue hanging out. He probably smelt food. The little glutton. Amajiki nodded, looking at the girl. Thrusting his arms out and holding the candy bag out to Mimi. I'm sorry I made you cry. Please accept this candy as an apology. Large gold eyes looked at the bag, slowly reaching out to take it. Mimi looked at the star-shaped sugar inside and opened the bag up. Taking a small handful out, she held her hand out to Amajiki. The manifest user let the small candy fall into his open palm, looking confused. Mimi reached out and pat Amajiki's cheek, smiling at him. Good job. Unable to take it anymore, Amajiki turned around and ran away from the pair as fast as he could. I'll buy you lunch later, Tama. Izuku shouted after the boy. The manifest user stopped and turned around, looking at Izuku for a moment, nodding. The next second the boy was off running, leaving the trio behind. Izuku, Mimi looked up at the green-haired boy as he put her back on the ground. Who was that? Amajiki, the boy responded, holding one hand out to Mimi. The other kept a tight hold of the dog's leash. He's a third year in the hero course? The girl let out a surprised noise. What? But he's so shy. Izuku offered to notice that Mimi had this look on her face. Even after all these months, the girl was still nervous about meeting new people. Mimi only really came out of her shell around Izuku and her family. There were some exceptions to that, though. But Izuku imagined Mimi's behavior was because of how she was treated. When everyone constantly treated you like a glass doll that would break, it took a toll on you. No matter how unaffected by it you may seem. Izuku couldn't understand that train of thought when it came to quirkless people. The world he had come from was the exact opposite. The quirkless were the ones that held all the power. Those with quirks were seen as nothing but monsters that needed to be killed or imprisoned. How things had changed in 200 years. Mimi, Izuku knelt down, taking the girl's hands. You know Fat Gum? The BGMI hero. The girl's eyes widened slightly before looking excited. Mama has all his recipe books. She says that after lunch rush, he's the only hero who knows what good food really is. Izuku nodded with the assessment of the hero. That's right. Well, Sun Eater is one of Fat Gum's sidekicks. Even though he's really shy when he's also super strong when he has something to protect. Really? Yup, Izuku nodded, holding his hand up. Why don't we watch last year's sports festival tonight? Okay, Mimi nodded, taking Izuku's hand. The pair then made the trip back to the dorm. When the pair got to the building, Mimi marveled how big it was. Upon opening the door, they were greeted by multiple eyes from both parents and incoming students. Hello everyone, Izuku smiled. Sorry about the wait. We got a little lost on my way here. A tall buff man with orange hair smiled. I hear that. This place is like a little village inside a fortress. I'm impressed with how quickly you all finished the construction. That was mostly Cementos. Izuku led Pochi over to his bed, giving the small dog a warning look. I must say, a beautiful dark-haired woman in a red suit spoke, looking around. Smaller than I thought it would be. Mother, one of the recommendation students hissed, her face reddening slightly. Principal Nedzu originally wanted to make a small apartment building-like complex. Izuku walked back over to the group, looking at everyone. There were more people than he anticipated here. It looks like many incoming first-year hero students were planning on taking advantage of the dorm system. Thankfully Shudo was here, and not with Endeavor this time. But where were Uraraka's parents? Surely the girl hadn't come alone? Ultimately, That idea was scrapped to make individual dorm buildings. Izuku continued looking over each of the adults' faces. UA wants the dorms to create strong bonds. We want students to grow together and make lifelong friends and connections. I see, the woman smiled softly, glancing at who Izuku assumed was her daughter. The all-or-nothing user would have to watch the girl. If she had been bullied in the past, he wouldn't stand any repeats on his watch. Excuse me, a blonde boy with pale blue eyes raised his hand. Sorry for interrupting. But you look familiar. Have we met before? Izuku felt Mimi come to stand behind him and grab his leg. Yeah, I know what you mean, another blonde remarked, a strange black lightning bolt in his hair. Super familiar looking. Are you a second year or something? Oh no, Izuku shook his head. This will be my first year also. If this is your first year, why are you here? Why not someone older? The red and white-haired woman next to Shudo asked nervously. Or a teacher? Izuku sighed, wishing that one of the teachers had come with him like he originally wanted. However, everyone was stretched thin between the other dorms, security, and preparing meals for the overnight guests. Even with everyone working together, the third-year students were still called in to help. Taking a deep breath, Izuku put on his best Tamura-like face. I understand your concerns. All of you are going to be entrusting UA with your precious family members. I know I may seem young, but no, we at UA only want what's best for the students. Izuku noted the adults' faces ranged from curious to skeptical. It would be so much easier to tell everyone that he was Nedzu's personal student. But Izuku didn't want his future classmates to think he was getting special treatment. Izuku helped make this place, Mimi declared, coming out from behind Izuku. Mr. Nedzu and Izuku worked hard to make this place nice. Please don't be mad at him. Mimi. A pink-skinned girl suddenly cried, pointing at the pair. Matter-kun. Oh my gosh, that's why you look so familiar. No way, a boy with silver hair said, whipping out his phone and typing something in. A second later, Izuku heard himself talking. Matter. Superficial titles like number 1 and strongest don't matter. What matters is helping people, not hurting them. And hey, a red-haired boy who was watching the phone said. That's the same girl too. Ribbit adorable. Totally, the pink-skinned girl said, skipping over to the pair and smiling at Mimi. Hi there, I'm Mina Ishido. Look, I have pink hair too. Want to be pink buddies? Mimi looked at the smiling girl, her face turning red before she dove behind Izuku again. Izuku just laughed at Ishido's pouting face and placed his hand on the curly pink hair. Sorry Mimi, here's a little shy around strangers. Thanks to Mimi, the tension was now broken. Izuku could see some of the parents still send him curious glances every once in a while. But most seemed more interested in the dorm's layout now. It was clear that some of the adults had been worried about the male and female students living in the same building. Thankfully, one quick look at the security system installed on each floor was enough to ease their minds. If anyone tried to sneak into the other side of the building after hours, a loud alarm would be triggered. Obviously, boys and girls weren't allowed in each other's room alone. Cameras installed in the hallways would make sure that didn't happen. Midnight had also insisted on one of the empty rooms be converted to make it into a place where the students could have private conversations with each other. Some teachers thought this to be too tempting for the students. But Present Mike had backed the rated R heroine, citing that some topics couldn't be discussed freely in the common room as they could behind a closed door. A large soundproof glass pane instead of a concrete wall was used. Instead of the typical dorm room setup, there was a couch, a few chairs, and a large table inside. To access the room, all students entering needed to swipe their student cards. By the time the parents had finished inspecting every room in the building like seasoned CSIs, it was getting close to dinner. Izuku returned everyone to the common room, surprised by who was waiting for him. Standing in complete hero form, Vlad King and Eraserhead wait for the group to return. Well, this is a surprise, Izuku said, looking at the men. I thought you both were only security detail? Vlad King coughed. Nedzu called in a small favor from some of the local alumni. It just didn't seem right not to introduce ourselves to our future students. Turning to the group, Vlad King gave a slight bow. Good evening. My name is Vlad King. I will be the homeroom teacher for Class 1B. I promise to do my best and train you to be strong heroes for the future." The students and parents all looked touched at the words. There were a few excited eyes that turned to Aizawa since he was obviously going to be teaching 1A. "Right?" the man said, rubbing the back of his head. "I'm Eraserhead. I'll be teaching 1A. It's nice to meet you." "That's it," ran through everyone's minds. "Uncle Sho," a pink blur ran out towards the man. Aizawa sighed and leaned down to pick Mimi up. After the mess her older sister made in one of the support labs, the underground hero had promised to return her to her mother. "Hello Mimi, how was the tour?" "Super fun," the girl stretched her arms out. "I just hope sis had just as much fun as me." Judging from the thrown around parts Aizawa had seen in the lab before he left with Vlad, the older Hatsum had clearly had her own version of fun before her mother had busted her. "I'm sure she can tell you all about it when I return you to your mother," Aizawa nodded, looking at Vlad. "Are you going to be okay escorting everyone to the gym?" The blood user nodded. "Of course." Turning to leave, Aizawa made his exit as quickly as he could. Mimi shyly waved goodbye from over his shoulder at everyone. A few minutes later, Vlad started filing everyone else out. Izuku watched as they all walked by. Shudo and his sister, mother, practically ran out of the building. Ashido and the red-haired boy were chatting with an orange-haired girl. A boy with a bird-like appearance was quietly talking to a girl with white hair who just nodded back. The dark-haired recommendation student was excitedly chatting with another girl with a frog-like appearance. The parents seemed content to follow and watch fondly as their kids made new friends. All except one person, that is. Izuku waited patiently for that person to leave. Before Uraraka could make her escape, Izuku grabbed her by the back of her shirt, stopping her from leaving. "And just where do you think you're going?" To get dinner," the girl said, looking confused. "Ochako?" The gravity user stiffened slightly. She knew that tone. It was the same one her mom and dad used before. They grounded her. "Hey, I never got a chance to thank you for helping me," Uraraka smiled, trying to change the topic. Izuku frowned deeper. "Where are your parents, Uraraka?" The girl looked away nervously, her voice dropping to a whisper. "At home." "What?" Izuku said, letting the girl go like she burned. "Why?" "Well," Uraraka said, looking flustered. "Mom and Dad had to work this weekend. But I really wanted to come to the open house. So, I grabbed my savings and hopped on the train." Izuku honestly wasn't sure what to say right now. Was this how Hisashi felt when he had done something stupid? If it was, the all-or-nothing user was defiantly apologizing to his eldest brother the next time they talked. Taking a deep breath, Izuku let out a sigh. "And just where were you planning to stay tonight?" "Your name isn't on the overnight list." "I didn't know there was one," Uraraka laughed, scratching the back of her head. "But that's okay. I brought enough money for a cheap hotel room." "No," the boy thought immediately. "Just no. There weren't many places that weren't sketchy that would be open later." Izuku was not letting his future classmates/students spend the night in some creepy hotel. Honestly, what were kids today think? Izuku gasped, realizing something at this moment. Midoriya," a hand waved in front of his face. "You all right there?" Izuku realized right now that he wasn't just a person out of time. He was an old man out of time. And all his future classmates were babies with no self-preservation instincts. Groaning slightly as he ran his hand over his face, Izuku decided. Until his classmates/students developed enough to protect themselves, Izuku would have to protect everyone just as hard as the other teachers. And it all started here. Taking Uraraka's hand, Izuku leaned in close. "How do you feel about the mad scientist?" As nerve-wracking as it was waiting for exam results were, the first day of school was always 10 times worse. Thankfully, the introduction of the UA open house for the dormitories had unforeseen results. Returning second and third years who helped out could meet and catch up with their classmates. It also gave the older student body a rare chance to mingle with the other classes, all without having the looming competitive nature that the sports and cultural festivals fostered. As for the first years, many walked into their homerooms and were greeted by familiar faces. For those who hadn't attended, a few icebreakers were all that was needed before everyone was introducing themselves and making friends. The only class that didn't seem to share this attitude was the new hero class 1A. Everything had been going okay in the beginning. The members of the new Alliance Heights had all seemed to be able to strike up easy conversations with their new classmates. Only Todoroki, who seemed intent on ignoring everyone, and one other student named Bakugo were immune to the cheerful, welcoming atmosphere. When Ida walked into the classroom, all the engine user wanted to do was make a good impression. But when he saw Bakugo's feet on the desk, something inside him snapped. Marching over, Ida stood in front of the glaring blonde. "Kindly remove your feet off the desk this instant." Bakugo looked up, face blank for a moment before smirking. The explosion user had been waiting to see which of these extras would try and assert themselves as de facto leader of the class. The best way to find out which idiot thought they were better than him was to set up a situation like this. Either someone tried like this extra to assert themselves, or they all rolled over and allowed Bakugo to take his rightful place on top. So far, the explosion user was betting on that two-toned idiot at the back who tried. But that idiot seemed more interested in ignoring everyone like he was better than them. Better than Katsuki. After Bakugo showed glasses here who was really in charge, the rest of these losers would fall into line. And then he would show that half and half loser where his place was. What was that? Did you say something? Ida pushed his glasses up. Amongst all the eyes watching the pair, nobody seemed to notice how a few people seemed to look around the room. As if they were searching for something. This is the first day, and you're already damaging school property. I'm asking you nicely to please remove your feet. You're kidding me, right? Bakugo's grin grew as he looked at the others from the corner of his eye. Good, he thought, seeing that everyone was watching him. What did your old school put a stick up your ass? Or were you born like that? How rude, Ida looked shocked. Taking a deep breath to compose himself, he extended his hand. Let's start again. I'm Tenya Ida, who previously attended semi-private academy Bakugo stood up, slamming one hand on the desk. That means you're some stuck-up elitist, right? Maybe I should blow you to bits so you can see how the real world works. Ida reeled back in shock. You would threaten your classmates? How awful. And you wish to become a hero? As the door slid open and Uraraka walked in, completely unaware of the tense atmosphere she had just snapped. Most of the others, though, gave an internal sigh of relief, silently thanking the girl for her timely interruption. Kaminari, though, noticing Uraraka's depressed face, and gave a huge wave to take the attention away from what was happening across the room. Yo, Uraraka, the electricity user smiled brightly. You were nearly late. Did you find him? The brunette just sighed deeper and shook her head. Oh. Has he shown up yet? Afraid not, Kaminari smiled, leaning forward over his desk. Midoriya better hurry if he doesn't want to be late. Midoriya? That caught Bakugo's attention. Meanwhile, Ida shifted his attention to Uraraka as he robotically moved towards her. You, Ida pointed his hands, making chopping motions. You are the puking girl from the exams, right? I am glad to see that you are okay. What's he talking about? Jiro asked, looking at Kaminari. The pair had lived in the same city but never met before. However, their shared interests in underground bands led to them becoming fast friends. The blonde just shrugged. According to Midoriya, she overused her quirk in the exam and blew rainbow chunks. Uraraka blushed and tried to hide her face. Meanwhile, Jiro's Jack snuck under the table and zapped Kaminari lightly for his crude choice of words before returning to her phone. If you're here to make friends, then I suggest you pack up your stuff right now and get out. The voice startled the students. Face full of dread, Uraraka slowly turned around and saw a yellow thing lying on the floor. Giving a small cry of alarm, she jumped closer to Ida, nearly knocking both of them onto the floor. Failing to recognize the face staring at her a moment too late. Zipper, sliding down a hand holding a juice pack, reached out, emptying it with a single hard squeeze. The yellow caterpillar-looking form slid into the class, shutting the door before a man emerged from within. It took you 8 seconds to be quiet, that's not good. Now, then this is the hero course, Aizawa spoke, walking over to the podium looking at the students. My name is Shota Aizawa. Wait, Where's Pro Midoriya? Some of the students frowned, wondering who this famed Midoriya was. Before anyone could answer, one of the ceiling tiles quietly slid open. A red mark appeared on the underground hero's forehead for only a split second before he dropped to the ground. A large bang followed as something was thrown onto the floor. Screams erupted as the class erupted into chaos. A dark shape dropped down from the ceiling, metal glinting in its hands. Most of the students were too shocked by what was happening to realize what was going on. That is until the cold feeling of steel slid along their skin. No one saw or heard their attacker coming. There was no rhyme of reason as to who they attacked. And because of the smoke in their eyes and the loud screams, many were blind and helpless. Even those who thought themselves strong, like Bakugo and Todoroki, dropped to the ground with one well-placed hit from their assailant. "All right, that's enough," a deep voice rang out. The sound of something sliding open happened before the smoke started to dissipate. As the smoke cleared more and more, everyone saw a masked figure hunched on top of the podium. Aizawa sighed and wiped the red paint off his forehead. "You're late." "I am not," the person said, removing their mask to reveal Izuku underneath. "I've been here the whole time." "You fucking bastard." Bakugo yelled, explosions starting up as he prepared himself to launch at the spy. "I'll kill you." Aizawa's scarf snapped out, and he activated his quirk. "Stand down, Bakugo." But God damn it. Bakugo struggled, wondering why his quirk wasn't working. "What the hell is your scarf made of?" "It's not a scarf. It's a captured weapon made from carbon fibers and a special alloy wire," Aizawa answered, tightening the scarf. "I said stand down." "You're giving me dry eye." "Dude," Kaminari groaned, sitting in his seat, heartbeat going a mile a minute. "Why?" Izuku smiled sweetly as he hopped off the podium. "I'll let you know in a sec. First, would students number 9, 11, 12 and 14 please come up here?" Koda, Jiro, Shuji and Tokoyami gulped and nervously made their way up to the front. Izuku just smiled and reached into the belt he was carrying. "Please hold out your hands," he asked. The four looked at their homeroom teacher, who nodded and extended their hands. A moment later, a small sticker was placed on the skin. "You each showed great situational awareness. I was up in the ceiling for over an hour, but you four are the only ones who seem to notice my presence." Izuku looked back at the rest of the class. "As for everyone else, we'll work on this later." "You're not our teacher," Mineta pointed at Izuku angrily. "You can't tell us what to do." Izuku smiled and was about to say something when Aizawa's scarf unfurled itself from Bakugo and latched onto him instead. Wrapped up like a mummy, all the Viridian-haired boy could do was sigh when Aizawa started talking. "Like I was saying earlier, I'm your homeroom teacher Shota Aizawa. And this," the man spoke, holding Izuku up, so he was dangling a few inches off the ground, "is your last classmate and your other teacher Izuku Midoriya?" The shocked cries and shouts of confusion that followed had Aizawa activating his quirk again. "Quiet." It took the class almost 4 seconds to be quiet. Satisfied with a better time, Aizawa walked over to his sleeping bag, dragging Izuku with him. He reached inside the comfortable yellow material and pulled out a single gym uniform. "Get changed and meet me at Field 1, Aizawa ordered, walking out the door, slamming it behind him. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. "Explain to me exactly what exactly hell you were thinking?" Dark eyes glared down at Izuku. "It was just a small test," the boy shrugged as he continued to remove all the hidden items from his outfit. "I needed to know where the starting line was." "And?" Izuku's lips pursed like he bit into something sour. Mixed reaction. "Not bad, but not good either." "Explain," Aizawa demanded. "Like I said, the four who sense me have good instincts," Izuku explained, stripping his jacket off and putting on the gym uniform's jacket instead. "Jiro and Shuji's quirks must have let them hear me. Koda may have been tipped off by any animals that may have known I was there. And Tokoyami's quirk kept popping out a little to search for me. And shooting me," Aizawa gestured to the still red mark. No doubt the paint pellet he was shot with came from Power Loader's newest resident, Problem Child. Whatever was in the pellet contained a chemical that did in fact shut down the underground hero's control over his body. For one agonizing minute Aizawa could not move. What did that accomplish? I needed to know who's gonna fight and who's or flee, Izuku answered, waving as he saw some of his classmates coming towards them. Lowering his voice, the time traveler looked up at Aizawa. Netsu told me the odds on them ending up dead or forced to retire because of injury. Oboro's face flushed painfully in Aizawa's mind. These kids are babies compared to you and me in terms of combat and experience, Izuku continued. You have years working as an underground hero behind you, whereas I have been in a literal war. But these kids, no matter what anybody says, have grown up in peace times. They're weak, and as such they need to grow up fast if they want to survive. Experience is the best teacher. Aizawa thought about it and sighed. He could see the logic in what Izuku was saying. Do you plan to do this to Vlad's class also? Somewhere in the auditorium, Vlad King shivered. Vlad specifically told me to leave his class alone today. He seemed to sense I would do something crazy. Aizawa grinned, his own students shivering now at the sight of it. He specifically said today? Yup. Izuku chirped. Chuckling slightly, Aizawa noticed Uraraka coming towards him, looking nervous. Excuse me, sir. Shouldn't we be at the opening ceremony? No time for that, the underground hero turned to face the class. If you want to be heroes, then you have no time to waste on meaningless stuff like that. Walking over to a basket holding some baseballs, Aizawa picked one up. As you know, A's curriculum is less traditional than most schools. This applies to us teachers as well. So today, to get the ball rolling, we're going to had a small quirk apprehension test to see where you all rank. Some of the students gulped. Softball throwing, long jump, the 50-meter dash. All those other tests you did in middle school will serve as my way of assessing your current levels, Aizawa explained, tossing the baseball up and down as he talked. Since the government still foolishly likes to pretend, we are all equal by not letting those with the most power excel. It's not a rational move, and one day they'll figure this out. But until then, dash. Aizawa caught the ball and tossed it at Bakugo. Bakugo, you're our top scorer this year. How far were you throw in middle school? 67 meters, the explosion user answered looking bored. Good, Aizawa nodded. Now, try doing it with your quirk. Anything goes as long as you stay in the circle. Nodding, Bakugo stepped up to pitch. Stretching slightly to loosen his muscles, the explosion user reared back, activating his quirk. Die. The resulting massive wave of dust had everyone covering their eyes. As soon as it settled, the class looked at the smirking Bakugo, all thinking the same thing. That. Aizawa looked at the device in his hand, waiting for the numbers to stop. As soon they stilled, he turned it around and showed it to the students. 705.2 meters. I find this is the most reasonable way is figuring out the current limits of your quirks, Aizawa explained, noticing some excited faces already. Afterwards, we can work on figuring out what kind of heroes you'll be. There was a wave of excited murmurs from everyone. This is awesome. Alright, I can't wait to show off what I can do. Seriously, the hero course is the best. Izuku stood stone-faced, clenching his fists together as he listened to some of the things being said around him. The restrictions on quirks baffled him. Since people weren't allowed to use their quirks, many didn't have a good handle on controlling them. Even using it in self-defense could still land someone with jail time. Netsu had cited a man named Destro as someone who wanted people to be free to use their quirks. Izuku on a certain level agreed with the man. The time when Destro was alive was a dangerous one. Not as dangerous as the dawn of quirks. But still people were getting hurt and dying because those in power were abusing their status. But giving people a free pass when it came to quirks was just another slippery slope. Humans, no matter who they are, were easily corruptible. Destro's desire for people to be able to protect themselves could easily be twisted. Power, no matter how noble the goals, always corrupts you in the end. Like that one villain from the old Marvel movies. The one who believed wiping out half the universe would solve everyone's problems. Theory and practice almost never saw eye to eye. It was easy for Izuku to imagine a society where those with strong quirks ruled over those with weak ones. And to make matters worse, where would those with invisible or no quirks fall in that sort of society? Izuku shuddered to think about it. Aizawa frowned at his class. Awesome, you say, the underground hero repeated, looking at everyone with dark eyes. Right? You all think that after studying here for the next 3 years, you'll be heroes. Is that right? The intense aura the Aizawa was giving off had everyone too shocked to speak. Make one thing perfectly clear. After we finish these tests, at least one of you will be expelled. Aizawa gave a maniacal grin as he pushed back some of his hair. Welcome to U.A's hero course. A new sense of camaraderie was born amongst the new students of 1A. It was one born out of the instant shared hatred for their new teacher as he explained the test to them. Even with the allowance of their quirks for the tests, the looming threat of expulsion hovered above them. But if the students wanted to be heroes, this was their starting line. They just had to make sure they didn't fall flat on their faces at the starting bell. All right, everyone, Izuku clapped his hands together, stepping away from Aizawa. Before we start the test, everyone, line up for some quick warm-up exercises. There's no time for those, Aizawa said, looking at Izuku. Not if we want to get everyone done before lunch. And risk injury and muscle soreness, no way. Izuku let out an exaggerated gasp. We'll be doing most of the tests in groups. The students can record their scores while I have our dear mechanical army record their performances for later dissection. As if on cue, 4 small robots appeared on the field. 2 were pulling wagons with clipboards, writing utensils and notebooks. The others had camera equipment and were already setting it up on the field. Hey! Bakugo yelled, stomping towards Izuku. Don't act like you're in charge. Izuku looked at the rest of his classmates and saw a mix of curious, annoyed and resentful gazes. In truth, Izuku's authority as a teacher was primarily academic. Netsu had set up a tutoring program for Izuku to run throughout the years. It was mainly to help the students who fell behind trying to juggle school and hero duties. Izuku had to learn to balance being a teacher and being a classmate as well as a future hero. Taking a deep breath, the boy sent a silent prayer to Tamura, asking for his older brother's strength and patience. I am your teacher and classmate Bakugo. Green clashed with red. You all may not like it or me, but when I am acting as your teacher, you will respect me and that authority. Do I make myself clear? Lightning crackled between the pair. Thankfully, the tense atmosphere was broken by Kirishima putting his hand up. Does that mean you're not doing the test, Midoriya, sensei? Breaking away, Izuku looked back at the class and shook his head. Absolutely not. I'm doing the same as you. This is why I want us to do these warm-ups first. Recovery girl shouldn't be bothered on the first day because of something so illogical. I see. Yaoyorozu clutched her clipboard tighter. That would make the most sense. Warming up would loosen our muscles and help us finish the tests in the time frame sensei wants us to. Oh, Mina said, fist hitting her open palm. Plus, breakfast was not too long ago. Stomach cramps this early would majorly suck. A slow wave of murmuring broke out amongst the students. That's right, Izuku nodded. Now, everyone, please stand arm's length apart. The students did as they were told, mimicking their classmates' outstretched arms. Izuku even moved away from Bakugo, giving the explosion user space. And we'll start with the arms. Reach high, everyone. It took 10 minutes for the class to warm up enough. By the time they were finished, the robots had set up the field and cameras for the test. Now that everyone's finally ready, Aizawa spoke, holding a fancy-looking folder. Let's begin. The class was divided up into 4 groups of 5. It was split to mimic the class seating chart. When one group was done, they would follow one of the robots to the next test. Everyone did their best to combine their natural abilities and quirks to get a better score. Sidestep was easily dominated by Mineta. The boys used his quirk to create large purple mounds on either side of himself so that he could bounce back and forth between them at increasing speed. Both teachers were impressed by this tactic, as well as the great skill shown by Ishido and Hagakure showed during their own turns. The pink girl hummed a song under her breath and moved her arms around, almost like she was dancing. Hagakure, however, showed impressive speed as she moved back and forth. Many of the students showed remarkable speed during the 50-meter run. Students like Bakugo, Todoroki and Aoyama used their quirks to pull out ahead of the others. The naval laser user had to sit out for a while after he was done. But none could compare to the patented speed that Ida possessed. The engine user blew the competition away in a large cloud of dust. Standing long jump ended in a two-way tie. Bakugo and Uraraka won by using their quirks and propelling themselves far beyond the pit. Well, others like Azui, Ojiro, Tokoyami and Yaoyorozu just barely hit the end of the sandpit. They used their quirks to propel themselves but couldn't go as far as the others. Izuku, who had been watching everyone closely, was now starting to see who needed the most work in terms of physical strength. By the time the 20-meter shuttle run came around, the gym had been well cleared of staff and students. And unlike the previous 50-meter run, most of the students didn't have enough control of their quirks for this exercise. Ida tried a few times and nearly ran into the gym wall a couple of times before giving up. Many students didn't use theirs aside from a bit of boost, except for Todoroki, who glided back and forth across an ice patch with all the skill of a professional skater. Raw power was the point of the grip strength which Shuji had plenty of. The gentle pair of Kuda and Sat, as well as the manly Kirishima, was only lagging a few points behind the dupli arm user. The students' flexibility during toe touching divided the class equally. Half were able to go beyond in the exercise like Ashido and Kaminari. Others like Todoroki and Ida had their ridged personalities reflected in their scores. Polyupus had a couple of dark horses take center stage. Siro and Jiro each took the top spots in this test. The tape user attributed his skill to the strength he needed in his arms to use his quirk so easily. Jiro stated that music wouldn't be rocking to play with weak noodle arms. This left the last event, softball throw, was everyone's last chance to give it their all. To avoid expulsion, they would have to pull out all the stops. Since Bakugo had already done his 705.2 meters was the distance to beat. But nobody even came close to breaking the 600-meter range except for Uraraka, who just floated her ball into space. "Hey, you damn nerd," Bakugo stamped up to Izuku as he was stretching. "Don't think I don't see what you've been doing." Izuku didn't even pause his movements. "And what's that, Bakugo? You haven't been using your quirk this whole time." The explosion user set off a small series of blasts in his hand. "What do you think you're better than us?" A few students turned to look at the altercation. "Seriously?" Kaminari said from his spot on the ground, completely exhausted from the last test. "Dude, what are you? A machine?" "I just have a lot of energy." Izuku stopped moving. "As for my quirk, you're right. I haven't used it once." "Not because I don't want to," Izuku interrupted. "It's just that repeated use of it could make me pass out." Ida and Uraraka suddenly remembered how Izuku had fainted after saving the gravity user. The energy is needed to use a quirk like that. Something that could cut through metal like a hot knife through butter must be considerable. Suddenly the pair were glad that their teacher/classmate hadn't used his quirk. Expulsion might have been a lot more plausible if they had to compete against whatever Izuku's quirk was at every turn. But since you are interested, let me show you. Izuku went and grabbed the ball, heading to the pitch. Taking a deep breath, Izuku focused all or nothing, letting the quirk's power fill his entire body. This was different from the hit-and-run tactics he was used with Inko and Hisashi. All these months, Aizawa taught Izuku not to use his power-up in one go, and given him a painful refresher course after the entrance exam. All Might's hands clenched the wall tightly from behind the gymnasium as he watched bright green, nearly white sparks flicker across Izuku. The past one for all users watched with serious faces through his eyes. Each was still trying to form an opinion on the boy. Izuku was like Tamura and so much is all for one. Aizawa got into position as red veins rose up, earning shocked gasps from the students. Pulling his arm back like a seasoned pitcher, Izuku put as much energy into his arm as possible, throwing the ball. "Smash!" he yelled, releasing the ball. A sonic boom blew backwards toward the rest of the class and beyond, traveling to the school, shaking the windows slightly. Netsu cackled with glee in the principal's office as the other teachers tried to calm the rest of the student body down. Dark eyes just stared down at the numbers as they kept getting higher and higher. Eventually, the ball reached wherever it was heading and slowed down. As soon as the numbers were still, Aizawa turned the device towards the students. 705.3. There was a brief moment of silence before the class erupted. Everyone tried talking at once, asking Izuku questions a mile a minute. Quiet. Aizawa frowned, activating his quirk. The silence was instantaneous this time. Nodding, the underground hero placed the last score into the computer, letting it calculate the class's rankings. Moments later, it beeped, and Aizawa pressed the holograph projector showing everyone. Here are your results. Momo Yaoyorozu, Izuku Midoriya, Shudo Todoroki, Katsuki Bakugo, Tenya Ida, Fumikage Tokoyami, Mizo Shuju, Mashireo Ojiro, Ijiro Kirishima, Mina Ishido, Uchako Uraraka, Koji Koda, Rikido Sato, Tsuyu Azui, Yuga Oyama, Hanada Siro, Denki Kaminari, Kyokujiro, Toru Hagakure, Minoru Mineta. How come Midoriya's not first? Kirishima asked, looking at the top. That throw just now was so manly. Midoriya only excelled at one test, Todoroki answered, focusing on the two names above his own. Meanwhile, Yaoyorozu constantly showed high marks in every test. Even if she didn't take the top spot. Momo felt giddiness bubble inside herself at the praise. The creation user had worked hard with trainers her parents had hired to maintain peak physical condition. On the other hand, Mineta was sweating bullets as he looked at the number 20 next to his name. Oh, and that whole expulsion thing, Aizawa said, sending the file off to his server for future use. That was just a logical deception. To make sure you all gave it your best on the tests? Izuku snorted at the loud cries that followed. He and Toshi had been given a look at Aizawa's past student roster. The all-or-nothing user knew this was anything but a lie. I'm surprised you didn't figure it out yourselves, Yaoyorozu said, looking at everyone. I'm sorry. I guess I should have said something. Yeah, you should have, everyone thought unanimously. Walking over, Izuku motioned the creation user to bend down slightly, whispering something in her ear. Yaoyorozu turned bright red as she was told about what happened to the last class Aizawa taught. Really? Izuku nodded. Go visit the second-year classrooms if you don't believe me. Turning around, Aizawa glanced back at the students. Get changed and head back to the classroom. There should be a syllabus on my desk for each to take home. Midoriya, you're in charge of making sure everyone gets one. Izuku saluted the underground hero, turning to look at everyone. All right, the Viridian-haired boy spoke, clapping his hands together. Everyone go get changed. We'll meet in the class after lunch. We'll be going over the curriculum and school year. Many students made sour faces but did as they were told, leaving Izuku and the 4 robots behind to clean up the mess. Ha! A loud voice echoed before All Might appeared in front of Izuku. Young Midoriya, I am here. Izuku looked at the blonde and gave a soft smile. Yes, you are. But how many times have I told you? You don't need to buff up to come to see me. It puts a strain on you when you do. The number 1 hero nodded, kicking some dirt like a little kid. I know, but I can't let the students get suspicious. Pre-class jitters? Izuku asked. All Might nodded slightly. It was all well and good to say he wanted to teach the next generation. But watching Izuku and Aizawa handle the students right now made Toshinori realize that he couldn't be like them. Toshinori had always had a soft spot when it came to kids. Izuku pats the hideous yellow suit. It's okay, you got this. And if you are still nervous, I'm sure Aizawa would be more than happy to sit in until you find your teaching legs. Really? All Might asked nervously. A shudder of fear ran down his spine at the memory of the last time he had bothered Aizawa when he wasn't in class. Red eyes peering out at him from inside the sleeping bag still made an appearance in Toshinori's nightmares. Izuku nodded. It never hurts to ask. Now go play nice with the other kids. All Might chuckled. You know you're not really older than us, right? Being frozen was like the universe hitting the pause button. You didn't actually age. Yet I'm still more mature than most of you heroes. Izuku quipped back. Jetpacks? Izuku scowled. Low blow. The pair continued to chat as they made their way back inside. All Might quickly run away as soon as they set foot inside the building so that no students could see them. After changing, Izuku did not head to the cafeteria but instead to the support labs. Popping his head inside, he was not surprised to find Mei cackling as she hovered over something, a welding torch in her hand. Not wanting to disturb the inventor, Izuku turned his attention to where Power Loader was watching against the wall. How's she doing? The support hero gave a cross between a grin and a grimace. I'm gonna have to pry her away from these labs every night. She's already made 3 things and the first day isn't even over yet. Mei's enthusiastic, Izuku shrugged. Just make sure to put food and water get put near her, and she'll be fine. And if it gets too tough, you can call me, and I can deal with her. Funny her mother said the same thing. Power Loader remarked. Pretty sure Mrs. Hatsum should be the last resort. Izuku shuddered, remembering the furious look on the woman's face when Izuku presented Ochako to her. Apparently, no child was off-limits to her as Mrs. Hatsum and Uraraka's parents discussed the gravity user's punishment over the phone. But let's say hypothetically I could get Mei out of the labs. Hypothetically, Power Loader turned to look at Izuku. If you can get her to bathe, eat, and sleep, I'll sign off on it. Just as long as it doesn't affect her grades. Score. Izuku thought, tucking this promise away. Call the all-or-nothing user crazy, but he had a feeling that Mei's knowledge of support would come in handy soon. Not to mention her patent-pending UA admitting baby might come in handy. Waving goodbye to the support hero, Izuku walked to where the third years had classes. Opening the door labeled 3A, he saw 2 members of this year's Big 3 trying to convince the third to eat in the cafeteria with them. Come on, Tama. Nijire tugged the dark-haired boy's arm. I want to go see all the cute first years. The cafeteria's gonna have so many people in it, the manifest users groaned, trying to curl up. I want to go home. Haha, come on, Tamaki, Mirio smiled, holding a hand out. We can find a quiet spot to eat? Or we can compromise, Izuku said, startling the 3 heroes as they looked up and saw him standing there. There's this great spot outside near the cafeteria windows. Izuku, Hato squealed, letting go of Amajiki and pulling the boy into a hug. I haven't seen you in forever. Did you get taller? Are you official yet? Are your classmates nice? Are they mean? Any interesting quirks? Izuku chuckled. I don't know if I'm taller yet, but hopefully, I'll be just as tall as my brothers in the future. Yes, Nedzu finally made me an official student. I have a mix of nice and problem classmates, it seems. And their quirks are fascinating. How many survived Aizawa's test? Mirio asked. All of us. What? The permeation user shouted, looking surprised. Hato and Amajiki were in 1B during their first year. Mirio was in 1A, and of his 20 classmates, only 12 were left after Eraserhead's test. I owe Tamaki lunch anyway, Izuku said, looking at the manifest user. Let's find a shady spot to talk. The 4 Hero Corps students sat under a tree. It was a beautiful day, and a cool breeze made the warm weather much more bearable. Mirio watched Izuku out of his eye as he explained this morning's events. Sir had asked his protege to keep an eye on the boy. Lemillion frowned when he was told this, not understanding Sir's problem with Izuku. The pair had never met before, at least not to Mirio's knowledge. There was the obvious answer that came from Izuku knowing All Might. But something in the blonde's gut told him that wasn't the whole story. Over the curriculum with them this afternoon, Izuku sighed, placing his chopsticks down. It shouldn't take us more than an hour. I'm just not sure what to do with the remaining school time. Oh, I know, Nijire bounced excitedly. Why not have a get-to-know-your party? Izuku raised an eyebrow. Wouldn't we need food for a party? Not necessarily, Amajiki spoke softly, his eyes never leaving his food. But the other classes might think you're getting special treatment if they hear you had a party. Especially 1B. The 3 friends groaned, memories of Vlad King and Eraserhead's one-sided rivalry flaring up. Oh right, Izuku's eyes widened. The second hero class. I got so caught up with the assessment test I forgot about them. Hey, here's a question, is there a difference between the classes? Nijire opened her mouth to say something, but Amajiki beat her to it. Quirk control. Quirk control? Izuku tilted his head. What's that? Mirio chuckled slightly. Typically, the 1A kids have quirks that can easily go out of control. They can put others in danger easier than their 1B counterparts. That's why the 1A teacher always has a quirk that can stop them. Take Tamaki and me for example, the wave user wrapped her around Amajiki's shoulder. His face reddening as Nijire pulled him closer. We knew how to use our quirks. Or at least we had a good working knowledge back when we were first ties. Vlad-sensei just helped us fine-tune things and expand on what we already knew. As for me, Mirio chimed in. If my quirk got out of hand, I could hurt myself. So having Aizawa-sensei keep an eye on me and step in when he needed to was important. Izuku hummed, taking a small bite of his food. After seeing how some of the classmates used their quirks during the test earlier, under the wrong circumstances, he could see which ones could hurt themselves or others easily. Izuku wouldn't just have to help the students with getting physically stronger. It seems he would also have to work on their quirk control. Oh, speaking of Aizawa, Mirio spoke, a haunted look coming to his face. You should tell your classmates about school and hero-related events. Why is that? 'Cause sensei likes to surprise people, Mirio replied. He says it helps prepare you for the unexpected. Nijire giggled. Vlad-sensei said Aizawa-sensei was just lazy. Like a cat. Suddenly, the four imagined a sizable black cat wearing Aizawa's capture scarf, curled up and napping in his customary yellow sleeping bag. They all laughed at how perfectly it seemed to fit the underground hero. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The students of 1A filed into the classroom. A small stapled stack of papers was innocently sitting on each of their desks. Lazily, everyone started slipping through it. Some get out pens and notebooks to write down some of the information, or any questions they may have. The door opened as Izuku walked in, scanning the room. A couple people had expected him to come dropping in from the ceiling again. All right, everyone, Izuku stood at the front of the room. Let's get started. First we'll talk about how the hero course is set up. Izuku began his lecture by explaining how morning and afternoon classes would be set up. He even added who would be teaching what subject. A few eyes widened at some of the big names that would be teaching them. From there, Izuku explained midterm and final exams. Like the support course, the future heroes would have two types of exams. One for school and one dealing specifically with their course. Now obviously the support course's second test is about what they can create. Izuku pointed to the words showing off the for UA courses. Management students, however, do a year-end project. They work on it throughout the year and present it to their teacher. Many choose to talk about how they can boost a hero's popularity or marketing them to the public. Ida raised his hand, standing up. As hero students, why is this something we need to know? Should we not focus on our own exams? An excellent question. Izuku pointed the chalk at the engine user. Does anyone have any ideas? Ashui raised her hand. Ribbit, so we don't end up causing the other students problems? That's a good guess, but sadly no. Izuku shook his head. Anyone else? A bird-shaped shadow burst from Tokoyami's back. They might pick us for their projects. That's right, Izuku smiled, giving a thumbs up. At the sports festival, the other courses see what the incoming heroes have to offer. As a result, some first-year support and management students try to connect with the heroes that could help them in the future. Izuku already had Mei on his side. The inventor built anything that popped into her brain just as quickly as the next idea. And Izuku had access to many old, untapped ideas from all the old shows and movies he saw 200 years ago. The all-or-nothing user shuddered at what Mei may create when he showed her some particular series. Walking over to Tokoyami's desk, Izuku pulled out a sticker. Excellent, Dark Shadow. The shadow bird beamed and held out its hand. Izuku tried to place the sticker on Dark Shadow, only to fall off and the bird to frown. Apologizes, Midoriya-sensei, Tokoyami said, looking at the teacher. I am afraid that Dark Shadow is completely one with the darkness. Your stickers will not work on them. I see, Izuku frowned, the sad look on the Quirk's face tugging on his heartstrings. Suddenly an idea popped into his head, and he returned to the podium. Taking out a piece of paper and writing Dark Shadow's name on it, Izuku returned to where he was and handed it to the sentient Quirk. Here we are, Izuku showed the pair. Dark Shadow's very own sticker page. Now we can put them on here, so they don't get lost. Dark Shadow chirped happily, causing Tokoyami to flustered as they hid at the desk, curling around the paper like a dragon protecting its hoard. Laughing, Izuku returned to his lecture, going briefly over the sports and culture festival, explaining what each one meant to the different courses. We'll go into more detail about them as we get closer, Izuku explained, pointing towards the school's first festival, the sports festival. However, I will warn you about this. You made it into the hero course now doesn't mean you stay here. A chill ran up everyone's spines. That's a lie, Mineta said fearfully. Stop trying to scare us. It's not a lie, Izuku replied. If another student from a different course does well enough in the sports festival, they have a choice on joining the hero course. For those who took the open exam, you must have seen some people with powerful quirks that aren't here. If they also took the general studies exam and were admitted, they have another shot at the hero course. According to Present Mike and Midnight, this was how Aizawa joined the hero course. But Izuku wouldn't tell the students that bit of information just yet. Katsuki scoffed. If those losers couldn't make it the first time around, what makes you think they'll be able to beat us at the sports festival? Some quirks don't work against robots. Green eyes narrowed of Bakugo. Izuku would have to talk to Aizawa about the boy's attitude. After watching Bakugo fight in the entrance exam, it was clear that the blonde was beyond arrogant and didn't care who got hurt. It was a good thing Kirishima had a hardening quirk, or he could have gotten seriously injured from some of the exploding debris. Right now, there could be a person with a powerful mental quirk in this school. Izuku leaned against the pillar. It's the quirks you don't always see that can be the most dangerous. Somewhere in the school, a person with purple hair sneezed. Red eyes narrowed, taking Izuku's words as a threat. Katsuki made a mental note to find out everything he could about the nerd's quirk. The explosions user's gut told him that the spy's weird energy during the ball toss was just the tip of what he could do. Now, moving back on track, let's talk more about your hero classes. Izuku walked up to the board, pulling out a marker and writing on the whiteboard. There are much combat and non-combat types you will all experience. Can someone name me a few? Battle, Kirishima answered, standing and getting into a fighting position. Uraraka raised her hand. Rescue? I guess knowing how to spy could be helpful, Jiro answered uncertainly as she twirled her jack around her finger. More and more, the students tossed out different types of things they might need to learn. All the while, Izuku wrote them on the board. Eventually, they ran out of things, and Izuku put the marker down, looking at the rather extensive list. I would recommend everyone writes this list down. Izuku turned back to the students. Even if you find that UA doesn't cover something. Say, for instance, criminal investigation dash. Todoroki ducked his head slightly. Midoriya was too obvious with his favoring Endeavor's son. No doubt after class, he would report Shudo's entire performance today during the quirk assessment, as well as Shudo's score on the test to his father. That was a phone call the dual quirk user wasn't looking forward to. It doesn't mean you can't do it yourself. UA has a huge library and all sorts of heroes teaching here. Ask them for pointers, talk to your upperclassmen. Take advantage whenever you can of being here to further yourselves. Remember, knowledge is never wasted. You just have to wait for the right time to use it. Some of the students decided to take a trip to the library to see what it offered. And since you've all worked so hard today, I'll give you a tip. Izuku stood before the podium. Tomorrow we'll be having our first Hero Foundations class, and it's gonna be battle style. So, start thinking of how you can use your quirks in combat. As if on cue, the bell rang, signaling the end of the day. Slowly everyone started gathering their things up, wondering who would be teaching tomorrow and what they would face in combat. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next day, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. All eyes looked on in horror at what was shown on the screen. None more so than All Might himself. Stay away from me! Izuku yelled, the sparks shooting off his body. I won't go back. Siro hung motionless from the room's ceiling, one eye watching Izuku. The other kept an eye on Todoroki as he dodged the sparks. The tape user wasn't sure what would happen if one of those things hit the ice user, but he didn't want to find out. Young Midoriya, All Might crackled in the earpieces. You must calm down. Young Hatsum quickly sends a message to Aizawa. Young Ida run to the principal's office. On it, sir? Now. One of the sparks hit the ground in front of Todoroki, cracking some of his ice. gray and blue eyes narrowed as he prepared himself, ready to unleash another large amount of ice at the out-of-control boy and end this test. Wait, young Todoroki dashed. All Might's warning came a second too late. Todoroki released another large sheet of ice, trapping Izuku inside it. The boy hung there, shocked and motionless. "It's over," the half-hot/half-cold user said, looking at Zero. "You're next." Zero gulped and prepared himself. Neither student noticed the light of Izuku's quirk getting brighter and brighter. The sudden explosion caught everyone off guard. Todoroki was thrown out of the room due to the sheer force of his ice breaking. Zero thankfully was able to stay focused enough to throw out more of his tape, keeping both himself and the bomb up in the air, albeit barely. Shoji's eyes widened, and he rushed into the building to help his teammate. Izuku stepped out of his former icy prison with a blank look. The only sound was breaking the ice under his boots as he moved closer to Todoroki. "You should have just let me go," Izuku spoke calmly, the white tendrils of his quirk sliding from his fingers. The 5 pieces enclosed his hand, forming one solid piece that snapped against the ice and concrete like a whip. "I didn't want to do this." Shudo felt fear for someone who wasn't his father for the first time. Gulping, the dual quirk user got up on unsteady feet, already planning to run. Izuku swept his arm to the side. The whip his quirk created, destroying 3 of the concrete pillars. "Now you've left me no choice." Izuku couldn't help but hum a happy tune as his feet swung happily under the desk. Today was tea day, the day that Toshinori would have his first ever class. Izuku was so proud of his nephew for coming so far. Toshinori struggled at first when the classes started, nervous for many reasons. Izuku had told Grumpy once, and the next day a package had been sent containing a single book. "So, who do you think our teacher's gonna be?" Kirishima asked. "I heard that this year some super high-ranked hero was coming in. I hope it's someone super manly." Jiro twirled her jack around her finger. "It could be a woman, you know. Do you think?" Kirishima smiled brighter, lifting one arm and flexing it. "Miruko's so awesome. I would love to be trained by her. She's so manly." The earjack user just stared, her brain seeming to shut down for a moment. Kaminari just snickered, taking pity on his classmate. "Being manly is a state of mind," the electricity user leaned back. "Right, Kirishima? Right?" The redhead struck a battle pose. "Ashido can get pretty manly when she fights." "Damn straight." Ashido pumped her fist up. "No mercy." "I am," a loud voice rang out, instantly silencing everyone as it was thrown open. Coming through the door like a normal person, All Might walked through the door in full hero costume, stunning many of the students for a moment. But soon, excited whispers enveloped the room, many students unable to contain their excitement. "And it's All Might? Is that his Silver Age costume? Best year ever." All right, settle down everyone." The #1 hero walked towards the front of the room. Taking a deep breath, Toshinori looked at his students. "As you all know, I am All Might. This year, I will teach you the first year's foundational hero studies. For those of you who don't know what that means, I, along with various other teachers and guests, I will be putting you through numerous trials over the course of the year to help you prepare for being a hero." Ida raised his hand. "Sir, what kind of trials should we expect?" "An excellent question, young Ida." Toshinori struck a pose, flexing his muscles. "I'm sure Midoriya-sensei went over with you how the hero course is set up. Trials will range depending on the teacher. 13, for example, will be joining us when we go over rescue training." Some of the students perked up at the chance at the hero's name training. "But today, we will be diving straight into the deep end as it was." All Might pulled out a card. "With this battle trial?" Izuku raised an eyebrow in surprise. He didn't think that Toshinori would start things off with combat. Pushing a button hidden in his hand, All Might let the secret panels in the wall open up, showing numerous numbered cases to the students. And since no hero is complete without their own costume, these have been provided to you. The number on hero grabbed one of the briefcases, showing it to everyone. Each one has been specially designed to match the requests you made. I hope everyone prepared something that both protects you and allows you to use your quirk to the best of your abilities. A cheer of excitement rang out from the students. All Might turned and strode towards the door. If he wanted to beat the students to the training ground and transform back for a quick rest, he would have to hurry. When everyone is changed, meet me at ground beta. Be ready to bring everything you have, young heroes. This might only be training, but I want you all to remember. Blue eyes looked at the students, a fire burning deep within them. Something that lit something within the next generation of heroes. Once you put on these outfits, you'll officially be recognized as future heroes. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. All Might couldn't help but have concerns when he saw his students' costumes. Decades of being a hero, All Might had seen a lot of unique costume choices. He even remembered Midnight's debut and how her shocking outfit sparked a complete overhaul in the entire community worldwide. But the number one hero just felt confused, suddenly having no idea what was happening in children's minds anymore. Some of the students appeared to have gone with the approachable look, like young Koda and Azui, or tried to look cool like young Jiro and Kaminari. Others appeared ready for a fight, like young Bakugo and Ojiro. Then there were the ones like young Yaoyorozu, Hagakure and Mineta. All Might had to hold in his desire to seek out the support people who designed those outfits. Mineta looked ridiculous, like a fruits bowl that had been picked over until only the grapes remained. Hagakure and Yaoyorozu. All Might had looked over their files. He knew how their quirks worked. The need for exposed skin. But Nana above helped him when they debuted. At least things cowl. Oh God. What was young Todoroki wearing? Sorry I'm late, a heavenly voice rang out as Izuku joined his classmates. Mask took a little longer to calibrate than I thought. Izuku had refused to let Toshinori see his costume design. A small part of the number one hero had been worried that Izuku would show up in a suit looking like his elder brother. The youngest Shigaraki instead decided on something completely different. Dark pants were covered with protective-looking armor over steel-toed red combat boots. Izuku discovered early on that he needed the same special shoes that quirkless people wore to accommodate the extra bones in his feet. Thankfully, his designer took this as a challenge and was able to make a variety of shoes to these specifications so he wouldn't have to run around in just sneakers. Like his pants, Izuku's shirt was black and had the same Kevlar-like material woven through it that would protect him from threats and still be light enough to move. White gloves with hidden tech and metal plates would help Izuku fight and access his technical support. In honor of his nephew, a simple smiling face mask that acted as an air filter along with a few other surprises. And a simple green visor that connected Izuku to Mei's online system. But the jacket was Izuku's favorite part of the whole costume. It was dark gray with green accents. A large picture on the back of 3 green swords connected with 7 suns, 2 moons and a single star surrounding them. Each sword was meant for a different brother. The suns for all the past, all for one user. Inko and Mikumo were symbolized by the moons. And Midori was the star. Looking at his classmates, Izuku felt his smile twitch at the sight of their costumes. Looking at All Might for help, the hero just shrugged. Sighing, Izuku put on his visor, accessed the system, and sent Mei a quick message. Code Pink. Ground Beta. Bring UA Baby 25. Midoriya, Uraraka said, wondering why her classmate acted like a mime. Whatcha doing? Izuku slid the visor off and smiled. Calling backup. By the way, your costume looks really cool on you. Thanks, the gravity user blushed slightly. I wish I had drawn it a little better. It's kinda tight in some places. Mineta gave a thumbs up to Izuku. Heroics is the best. Glaring at the perverted comment, Mineta squeaked and ran to the other end of the group. Turning back, Izuku sighed. Ladies always have it tough, he answered, remembering all the comics he read as a kid. Don't worry, I got you. All Might wasn't sure what Izuku was saying to young Uraraka, but he had a bad feeling about that smile. Coughing slightly, the hero turned back to the class to continue his lesson. Now then, moving back. On track, today's battle will occur indoors, All Might explained, looking at the students. Despite what the media chooses to show you, most battles typically occur inside. Kaminari raised his hand. Then why do they always show street fights? A good question, young Kaminari. All Might gave the electricity user a thumbs up. Most villains are smart enough to do crime away from the public's prying eyes. When heroes engage villains in combat, the media mostly captures those attempting to flee. The class murmured to themselves in agreement. Thinking back on most of the videos they watched, it did appear like the villains were trying to escape the heroes. Sir, Yaoyorozu raised her hand. What about villains who attack just for the sake of attacking? Yes, those types also exist, All Might answered with a sad look. It wasn't too long that the first anniversary of Water Horse's death happened. Toshinori was planning on secretly attending since the couple was a great help to him during numerous fires. I have found in my career there are two types of villains. Those who had just a bad time. And those who were born with genuine malice. Ha! Bakugo said, looking arrogant. All villains are bad. That's why we need to beat their asses. Young Bakugo, All Might look at the explosion user. The world is not simply black and white. I hope that you and your classmates endeavor to learn that while you are training here. Bakugo just huffed and crossed his arms. All Might smiled again, getting back to the lesson. Today's lesson will be rather easy. We will have simple 2-on-2 battles. Ribbit, what about foundational training? Azui asked. This is foundational training, All Might laughed. Up until now, all you've done is fight robots. But they don't adapt in combat like humans do. So today, you will all be fighting against each other. One team will be heroes and the other villains. How will we determine the winner? Do we have to worry about expulsion again if we do bad? How bad can we hurt people? What method will we be using to divide up? Doesn't this cape make me look magnific? All right, calm down, All Might spoke, gesturing with his hands to silence everyone. The exercise is simple. Villains have stolen a nuclear device and barricaded themselves inside a building. They win if they protect the bomb from the heroes or if time runs out. On the other hand, the hero team can win if they capture the villains or secure the bomb. I get it, Sato nodded. It's like an entry battle in video games. Theory and practice, though, Izuku looked at the sugar user. Most heroes who team up on the fly don't work well together. Intelligence about everyone's quirks and how we can work together will be key here. No one noticed how Shoji and Jiro suddenly turned their heads, hearing something off in the distance that was getting closer and closer. Very good, young Midoriya, All Might nodded, pulling out some boxes. And a dash. Shoot to thrill, play to kill. To many women with too many pills, yeah. Shoot to thrill, play to kill. I got my gun at the ready, gonna fire at will, yeah. All eyes whipped around, looking for the source of the noise. Looking up towards the sky, they saw something leaving black clouds behind it coming right at them. Charming, a voice yelled. Catch me. Activating all or nothing, Izuku jumped into the sky, catching Mei. The pair shared a smile for a moment before gravity took over, and they plummeted to the ground. Reacting quickly, Zero, who had gotten into the hero course through rescue points and stealth attacking the robots, shot out his tape. Connecting it to the lampposts forms a large spider-like web to slow the pair down. The two fell into the web without any problem, looking up at the blue sky before laughing. I regret showing you Iron Man clips, Izuku chuckled, looking at the inventor. So much regret. But it was so much fun. Mei sat up, wincing slightly as the tape peeled off her skin as she did. I can't wait to see the whole movie. Then I can calculate my baby for long-distance flight. Izuku feared the day he showed Mei the entire series of Marvel movies, especially Black Panther. How far did you get? Izuku asked, moving to the edge of the web. About halfway before the engine caught fire, Mei jumped down, looking at everyone and smiling. Nice to meet everyone. Name's Mei Hatsum, support course genius. Oh God, not her, Uraraka mumbled, recalling her night with the inventor. Zero G, is that you? Mei dropped her stuff and ran at the brunette. Uraraka barely had time to take a step back before Mei had yanked her helmet off. What is this? There's no protection here. Don't worry, G, we'll make a wonderful baby together, just for you. Kaminari and Shoji both slapped their hands over Minetta's mouth. Young Hatsum, All Might stammered slightly. What brings you here? Code Pink, Mei turned her attention to Todoroki, running her hands over the ice and skiing. Shameful. The single red eye flashed dangerously. What? May turned back to All Might. What are we doing today? Everyone was taken back slightly by the Pinkette's words to the number one hero. All Might just let out a sigh knowing there was no getting rid of the inventor. 2-on-2 battles inside, the hero told May. We were just about to pick teams. Awesome, I'll get my babies ready, May smiled, running back to her babies. All Might turned and glared at Izuku, who just smiled and shrugged in response. As long as I make sure she eats and sleeps, power loader okayed this? I'll be looking into that. Now moving back on track, the hero gave up showing them the 3 boxes to the students again. Your teams will be chosen by lottery. So simple, everyone thought. Everyone walked up to the box and drew a piece of paper before seeking out their partner. The teams destined to be chosen were Team A, Izuku and Shiro. Team B, Shoji and Todoroki. Team C, Yaoyorozu and Mineta. Team D, Bakugo and Ida. Team E, Aoyama and Ishido. Team F, Koda and Sato. Team G, Jiro and Kaminari. Team H, Uraraka and Kirishima. Team I, Ojiro and Hakagure. Team J, Azui and Tokoyami. Izuku looked at the tape user who was trying to get his helmet back from May. Thanks for the save earlier. Looks like I get a chance to pay you back. Shiro grabbed the helmet when May threw it, running over to Bakugo and grabbing his gauntlets. Fuck off, Dreads. No biggie, the tape user grinned, watching Kirishima get between the inventor and explosion user slipping the helmet back on. All Might reached into the hero and villain boxes. And our first combat pairing will be